and the Senators of the Republic of the Philippines.
The 53rd session in the first regular session of the 19th Congress is hereby called to order. The chamber will be led today in prayer by our distinguished colleague from Davao, Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa.
Our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear God, we stand before you today, humbled and grateful, humbled by our mercies that know no end. Grateful for today's opportunity to be a channel of those mercies to others. We know, Father, that you are a God of order, not unrest, and of peace, not confusion. You have declared that in your love for us, you have laid down plans for our hope, for the future that we long for. Forgive us then, O Lord, for all the times that we have attempted to take matters into our own hands. If we get overwhelmed by what little power or position we have, remind us that we are nothing without you. If our pride gets in the way of our humble acceptance of your ways, put us back in our place and create clean hearts in us, Lord. Restore your order in ourselves, our homes, our country, and in our world. We know also, Father, that yours is the kind of love that does not put oneself first. Your own beloved Son, Jesus Christ, came to serve and not to be served. Instill in us at every opportunity the mind and heart to do the same. May we never forget that anyone who seeks to lead must be the first to wash the feet of their brothers and sisters, especially into this world when we are threatened by war, disease, misinformation, disinformation, poverty. May we, the elected leaders, be the first to work out ways for reconciliation, health, truth, and love. May we always be the first to serve and the last to be served. All this we ask in your mighty name. Amen.
Amen. Secretary, please call the roll of members.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Angara, Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Escudero, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, the Senate President.
With 22 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, before we proceed, we'd like to put on record and acknowledge and welcome some guests from the gallery. First things first, Mr. President, we are delighted that we have with us our pride, Mr. President, of this nation, no other than Sir John Arcilia is here, Mr. President. We'd like to welcome and acknowledge his presence. Also with him is Mr. Lauren Jogi and Mr. Ed Capulong. We also have with us, Mr. President, the Bangsamoro Transition Authority Administrative and General Services Department, headed by its Director, Engineer Datu Jun Magdrama. Mr. President, we also have with us our friends from Gawad Kalinga, guests of this representation, and Senator Alan Cayetano, Mari and Luis Oquinera of Gawad Kalinga. We also have with us, Mr. President, the chairperson of the Marawi Compensation Board, Attorney Maysara Latip, and Dr. Jamaica Lamping Dimaporo, member of the MCB, Attorney Siti Hassan, board secretary. We also have with us Mayor Ermi Ralampagos of Dagohoy, Bohol, guest of Senate President Pro Temp Lauren Legarda. Guest of Senator J.V. Ejercito, the Vice Mayor of Burgos, Quezon, Vice Mayor Gina Gonzalez. That's all, Mr. President. Thank you.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to your Senate. And I'd like to make special mention to our award-winning actor, John Arcilla. I watched your movie, General Luna, and it made such a big impact on me. I've never forgotten that film. And to many other films that you've done, sir, congratulations on that. And all the awards that you have won. I'm a big fan, sir.
Mr.
And to
President.
all the others, again, welcome to your Senate.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, we also have with us one rider party list representative, Gutierrez, Mr. President, who is here with us inside
Our
the
dear
gallery.
colleague, Congressman,
Thank you.
welcome to the Senate, to your Senate.
Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we defer the approval of the journal of the 52nd session, Tuesday, February 21, 2023, at a later hour, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Mr. President.
Mr. Majority Leader, may I ask for just a minute suspension so I may approach the gallery and greet the guests? Are we?
Now? Yes, Mr. President, I don't mind. Move
1
that
minute
we
suspension. Session suspended. for 1
suspend the session for a minute.
I'm a fan. I want to
I know.
Sure.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to consider proposed Senate Resolution number 490 and for the Secretary to read the title of the measure. This is the resolution congratulating and commending Filipino actor Romeo John Gonzalez Arcilla. So move, Mr. President.
Naunahan ko pala, Mr. Majority Leader, yung pagpunta ko dun. Aakyat din pala sa dito.
I was about to
Yes, I
tell you,
didn't
Mr.
know. I
President.
did not know. I'm so sorry.
Maybe
Yes, there
because
being
you
no-
lack sleep, Mr. President.
I lack sleep. Yeah, we're a bit tired from yesterday. But there being no objection to the motion, motion is approved. We'll ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Resolution congratulating and commending Filipino actor Romeo John Gonzalez Arcilla for winning the coveted Volpi Cup for Best Actor in the 78th Annual Venice International Film Festival.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize, I was about to move that we recognize Senator Lito Lapid, but the distinguished gentleman from the great province of Pampanga asked this representation that his speech be inserted into the records, Mr. President, and with the permission of the body, may I be recognized, Mr. President, to co-sponsor the measure.
Yes, please proceed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body and the sponsor, this representation would like to co-sponsor Senate Resolution number 490, congratulating and commending Sir John Arcilla for winning the prestigious Volpi Cup for Best Actor at the 78th Venice International Film Festival for his magnificent portrayal of Sisoy Salas in the film On the Job, The Missing Eight. Mr. President, dear colleagues, kilala po natin si Sir John Arcilla, nakahanga-hangang aktor sa kanyang pagganap sa pelikula at telebisyon. He played the titular role in the 2015 blockbuster and critically acclaimed film General Luna, for which he won several awards. Noong pinanunood ko po itong pelikula ito, Ginoong Pangulo, talaga namang tumatatak at tumitimo sa puso ang bawat salita at linyang binitawan ng ating magaling na aktor, Mr. Arcilla. At isa nga po doon, Ginoong Pangulo, ang pinakasikat na linya, negosyo o kalayaan, bayan o sarili, pumili ka. His portrayal of Renato Buitre Hipolito in FPJ's Ang Probinsyano has been dubbed as one of the 10 most memorable male performances in Philippine history. He also delivered remarkable performances in the films Metro Manila, Birdshot, Cuaresma, Suarez, The Healing Priest, and Big Night. For his stellar portrayal of Sisoy Salas in On the Job, The Missing Eight, he was recognized, Mr. President, by several award-giving bodies who took home the Gawad Urian Award for Best Actor, and of course, the Volpi Cup at the 78th Venice Film Festival. Mr. John Arcilla's win in the world's oldest film festival is a testament to the world-class talent of Filipino actors. The Volpi Cup is even dubbed by the Italian ambassador to the Philippines, His Excellency Marco Clemente, as another Oscar. With his win, Mr. John Arcilla joined the ranks of renowned actors Sean Penn, Ben Affleck, Brad Pitt, Colin Firth, Joaquin Phoenix, and many more who previously won the award. Indeed, Mr. President, Mr. John Arcilla not only showcased his acting prowess to the world stage, he also raised the Filipino flag and brought great pride and honor to our beloved country. Sigurado po ako, Ginoong Pangulo, na sa mga susunod na gagawing pelikula ni John ay mas marami pang international award-giving bodies ang makakapansin at bibigyang parangal ang kanyang talento. Muli, karangalan po nating i-congratulate ang ating kababayang si John. Mabuhay ka at maraming salamat. God bless us all. Mr. President, I move that we recognize Senator Bong Revilla Jr. to give his manifestation. So move, Mr. President.
We'd like to recognize a distinguished colleague from the great province of Cavite,
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
President.
Bong Revilla.
I rise today to co-sponsor proposed Senate Resolution number 490, commending and congratulating my colleague in the entertainment industry, John Arcilla, for bagging the coveted Volpe Cup for Best Actor Award in the 78th Annual Venice International Film Festival. Muli, napatunayan na naman natin na ang talentong Pinoy ay hindi lamang may puwang sa international winning arena. Kaya rin natin makipagsabayan sa mga foreign actors. Hindi nga lang makipagsabayan sa mga foreign actors, kundi mangibabaw pa. Once again, the Philippines has been catapulted at the global stage after our kababayans was awarded for his stellar performance as Sisoy Salas in the movie On the Job, The Missing Eight. Being recognized by the Venice International Film Festival is truly an honor, Mr. President. The festival is considered world's oldest film fest, which aims to raise awareness and promote international cinemas in all its forms. Bagging the Volpe Cup is another. Ika nga mismo ni John, Copa Volpe is practically another Oscars. Ganyan kahusay si John. Ganyan kagaling ang Pilipino. Humanay ang ating kababayan sa malaking pangalan sa industriya, kagaya nila James Stewart, Burt Lancaster, Albert Finney, Marcelo Matrioni, Jack Lemmon, Liam Neeson, Sean Penn, Gerard Depardieu, Ben Affleck, Brad Pitt, Colin Firth, and Willem Dafoe. Ang sining at pelikula ay may tuturing na kayamanan ng ating bayan. And the talented artists and actors produced by our country may very well be considered as national treasures, Mr. President. John, you give us pride. Ang inyong obra at ang iyong talento ay pruweba na basta Pilipino, tunay na mahusay, tunay na primera klase. In ending, may I manifest my intent to be a co-author of this measure, Mr. President.
Thank you very much to the gentleman.
Thank you, Mr.
Our very own Agimat. So today, Eneva Luna meets Agimat.
Yes, Mr. President.
Kasama din natin si Bonifacio nandito.
Yes, Mr. President.
Si Senator Robin Hood.
And I'm about to move, Mr. President, that he be recognized to also co-sponsor and make his short manifestation,
Who
Mr.
also did
President.
the biopic of Andres Bonifacio,
Yes,
no
Mr.
other than our
President.
distinguished colleague, Senator Robin
Robin
Hood
Hood Padilla.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo Lacan. Maraming salamat po. At sa atin pong pinunong mayorya. A'udhu billahi minasyaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alam niyo po, mahirap na hong pantayan ang binitawan na talumpati ng ating pinunong mayorya. At ang atin pong mga binitawan din ng atin pong idolo, ang atin pong Emilio Aguinaldo nung nakaraang Expo celebration sa Luneta.
Tama.
Opo, hindi po natin makakalimutan yun. Nakakabayo pa yung ating kaibigan mula sa Cavite. Alam niyo po, Ginoong Pangulo, napaka symbolical po talaga ng araw na ito. Nakasama po natin si Antonio Luna dito sa ating bulwagan. Sapagkat ito po ay isang pagpapahiwatig po na magmula pa noon, atin lang pong binabalikan ang nakalipas, mahal na Ginoong Pangulo, na ang mga katulad po ni Antonio Luna, katulad nila Andres Bonifacio, katulad po nila Juan Luna, lahat po yan ay artist. Lahat po sila ay katulad po ni Andres Bonifacio at ni Sakay, sila po talaga ay mga stage actors. At ngayon po, napapatunayan po yan hanggang ngayon na ang artista po ay patuloy pa rin ang kanilang pagmamahal sa bayan. Hindi naman po maipagkakaila na magkaiba po kami ng political point of view ni Ginoong John Arcilla. Pero kami pong dalawa ay nagmamahal at umiibig sa inang bayang Pilipinas. Ngayon po, bilang pagtugon po sa kanyang tagumpay sa mga international awards, gusto ko lamang pong hingin sa mga kapatid kong mga senador na sana po dumating po ang panahon na yung araw-araw pong binubulong sa akin ni Senator Jinggoy Estrada na kailan ba natin maibabangon ang pelikulang Pilipino. Sana po sa pagkakataong ito na itinaas ni John Arcilla ang bandila ng Pilipinas at napatunayang ang antas ng ating talento at talino ay pinakamataas. Sana po dumating ang panahon, ang ipinagdadasal ng ating Senator Jinggoy Estrada na magkaroon po ng mga batas na muling magpapabuhay sa pelikulang Pilipino at yan po ay iaatas natin sa balikat ni Ginoong John Arcilla. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Maraming salamat kapatid Robin Hood Padilla. Senator Padilla.
Ginoong Pangulo, ako po'y datapot hindi sasama sa usapin ng pelikulang Pilipino. Nais ko pong ilagay sa talaan ng ating Senado na tayo po ay in full support sa ating mga kasamahan dito sa Senado. Lalo na Mr. President, ang susunod na magsasalita upang ibigay ang kanyang suporta at co-sponsorship. Walang iba kung hindi si Senator Jinggoy Estrada.
At winner din po yan ng Thomas Awards for Best Actor sa movie Made in the Philippines. Tama? Made in the Philippines? Huh? Anong movie na yan? Yung OFW, you're representing the OFW. What movie was that? Nanalo ka ng award.
Lakas na Saudi.
Lakas na Saudi. Yeah. Lakas na akatas ng Saudi.
Katas ng Saudi.
Hindi lamang siya po ay pang-action, siya po ay pang-romansa din. Kaya we recognize our distinguished colleague, Senator Jinggoy Estrada.
Maraming salamat, Mr. President. I would like to associate myself with the manifestations made by my colleagues and with the indulgence of the author and sponsor, Senator Lito Lapid. I would also like to be made co-sponsor of Senate Resolution number 490, entitled the resolution congratulating and commending Filipino actor John Arcilla for winning the coveted Volpi Cup for Best Actor in the 78th Venice International Film Festival. The many recent victories of our esteemed colleagues in the movie industry in various prestigious international film festivals and award-giving bodies like those of Ms. Dolly De Leon, Ms. Jacqueline Jose, Ms. Eugene Domingo, the late Ms. Sherry Hill, Mr. John Lloyd Cruz, Ms. Therese Malvar, Mr. Paulo Ballesteros, Mr. Alden Richards, Ms. Bel Mariano, and others. Bakit wala tayo rito, Senbong? Tsaka si Sen Robin, tsaka Sen Lito. Siguro sa susunod, baka makasali na tayo rito. Including this recent win of Volpi Cup awardee Mr. John Arcilla, all serve as a resounding testament that Filipino talent and artistry is an absolute world-class and par excellence. Ikinararangal po natin ang mga papuri at pagkilala na ito na sana ay magsilbing itong inspirasyon sa ating mga alagad ng sining ng pelikula na patuloy na paghusayin pa ang kanilang talento. Hangad ko rin na magsilbi itong motibasyon para sa ating mga manunulat, direktor at producer na patuloy na lumikha ng mga pelikulang may dekalibreng konteksto. Dahil sa mga ganitong uri ng pelikula lamang may lalabas at may papamalas ng ating mga aktor at aktres ang kanilang angking henyo sa pag-arte at pagsasabuhay ng mga karakter sa mga dekalidad na istorya ng kanilang mga pelikula. As an actor and producer myself, I am aware of the demand and necessity for quality content in order for us to compete globally and get the attention and the following of the international audience who have continuously evolving taste in their preferences in movies and TV series. Ang sarap po sanang manood ng Netflix na makita mong maraming Pinoy-made, Pinoy-starred, Pinoy-produced movies at TV series na mga karakter natin ang bida na ang mga magagandang lugar dito sa Pilipinas ang ipinapakita na ang ating mayamang kultura, tradisyon at makulay na buhay Pinoy ang ipinapalabas sa pandaigdigang madla. Again, our felicitations to Mr. John Arcilla, the first Filipino to have put our nation's name in the roster of the highly acclaimed actors in one of the oldest prestigious award-giving bodies in the world. Again, congratulations at mabuhay ka.
Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is the distinguished Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Hontiveros. I move that she be recognized, Mr. President.
Our distinguished Deputy Minority Floor Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros, is recognized.
Salamat kaayo, Mr. President. Si John Arcilla ay tanyag hindi lang sa pagiging magaling na alagad ng sining, hindi lang sa pagiging tapat na kumikilos alang-alang kay inang kalikasan. Siya ay mabuting Pilipino, tumatalima sa tawag ng kasaysayan. Tulad ng isa sa pinaka hindi niya malilimutang ginampan ng karakter, ang dakilang si General Antonio Luna. Sinabi po ni John sa ating lahat, Mr. President, ang pagpuna ay ating tungkulin bilang nagbabayad ng buwis. Ang pagpuna sa gobyerno ay hindi pagre-rebelde o hindi pagrereklamo. Ang pagpuna sa gobyerno ay pagmamahal at bahagi ng ating karapatan bilang mamamayang Pilipino. Sa mga dahilang ito at sa marami pa na alam po at hindi malilimutan ng sambayanang Pilipino, maraming salamat sa iyo, John, at ako po'y nagpupugay sa iyo. Salamat kaayo, Mr. President.
Maraming salamat, Senator Ontiveros.
Mr. President, the distinguished colleagues of ours, Senator Lauren Legarda, Senator Grace Poe, and Senator Bongo, would just like to insert into the records their co-sponsorship speech. I just want to put
We
that on
take
record.
note of that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture and with the permission of the body, I move that all members of the Senate be made co-authors of this resolution. So move, Mr. President.
There be no objection to the motion. All members are co-sponsors of this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, no other member wishes to interpolate or ask, propose any amendments to the measure. I move that we adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 490, subject to style. So move, Mr. President.
There be no objection to the motion of the Majority Floor Leader. Proposed Senate Resolution number 490 is hereby adopted. Congratulations to Mr. Arcilla.
Mr. President, may I ask for a minute suspension so that we can ask our guest for today, Sir John Arcillas, to go to the podium, Mr. President.
Yes, session is suspended to allow
Thank you.
our honoree to visit us here at the podium for a photo op with our members. Session suspended.
Mr. President, at this juncture and with the permission of the body, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders committee report number 6 on Senate Bill number 1359. This is the No Permit, No Exam Prohibition Act. So move, Mr. President.
If there be no objection to the motion of the majority leader, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1359 under committee report number 6.
May I ask the secretary to read the title of the measure?
An act prohibiting the imposition of a no permit, no exam policy or any policy that prevents students enrolled in public or private educational institutions from taking examinations or any form of educational assessment for reasons of outstanding financial or property obligations, such as unpaid tuition and other school fees.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize Senator Francis Chis Escudero, Chairperson of the Committee on Higher Technical and Vocational Education, to deliver the sponsorship speech. So
Our
moved.
distinguished colleague from the province of Sorsogon, Senator Escudero is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before my brief sponsorship remarks, may I ask for some administrative matters, may I ask for the inclusion of House Bill number 6483 to be made part of committee report number 6, since this was referred after
Yes.
we had already come up with the committee report. So move, Mr. President, that it be taken into account.
You have no objection, Mr. President.
And there be no objection as well from the members of the Senate. The motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, as the title of the bill suggests, this bill seeks to prohibit a no permit, no exam policy or procedure in any school, both public and private. And may I ask that my sponsorship speech be inserted into the records as well as the explanatory note of Senate President Zubiri, Senator Villar, and Senator Revilla as contained in Senate Bill number 787, 524, and 507 to be made part of the records as the respective sponsorship speeches of the original authors. I so move, Mr. President.
You have no objection, Mr. President, and if I may include into the motion these representations, sponsorship speech, co-sponsorship speech, together with Senators De La Rosa and Go, be also inserted, Mr. President. So
As well
moved,
as
Mr.
mine, I am also one of
Yes,
the
Mr.
authors.
President.
If my co-sponsorship speech.
And the
is
Senate
requested.
President, co-sponsorship speech.
Yes, there be no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1359 under committee report number 6. So move, Mr. President.
There be no objection, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders committee report number 7 on Senate Bill number 1360. This is the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act. So move, Mr. President.
There be no objection to the motion, motion is approved. We ask the secretary to read the title of the measure.
An act expanding the coverage of the tertiary education subsidy, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 10931, otherwise known as the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1360 under committee report number 7.
There be no objection to the motion, majority floor leader, motion is approved.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we again recognize the distinguished gentleman from the great province of Sorsogon, Senator Francis Chis Escudero, Chairperson of the Committee on Higher Technical and Vocational Education, to deliver the sponsorship speech.
Our distinguished colleague from Sorsogon, Senator Francis Chis Escudero is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Mr. President, as the title of the bill suggests, this bill seeks to expand the coverage of the tertiary education subsidy, or TES, in order to benefit more students who are deserving and who are in need. For this purpose, Mr. President, may I ask that the sponsorship speech of this representation, as well as the explanatory note contained in Senate Bill number 279 of Senator Estrada, as well as contained in Senate Bill number 29 filed by Senator Revilla, be made part of the records as their respective sponsorship speeches as well. So move, Mr. President.
No objection, Mr. President, except may we also add this representation's co-sponsorship speech and the co-sponsorship speech of Senator Go, Mr. President.
There be no objection to the motion of the majority floor leader, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1360 under committee report number 7.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, committee report number 9 on Senate Bill number 1470. This is the State Universities and Colleges Land Use Development and Infrastructure Plan Act.
There being no objection to the motion of the majority vote leader, motion is approved. We ask Secretary to read the title of the measure.
An act strengthening the mechanism for land use development and infrastructure planning and budgeting for state universities and colleges. Amending for the purpose Republic Act number 11396, otherwise known as the SUC's Land Use Development and Infrastructure Plan Act.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1470 under Committee Report number 9.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we again recognize Senator Francis Chis Escudero, Chairperson of the Committee on Higher Technical and Vocational Education, to deliver the sponsorship speech.
Our distinguished colleague, Senator Escudero, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, as contained in the title again of this measure, this seeks to amend the LUDIP Act by providing or requiring that all SUCs come up with their master development plan and providing funds therefore chargeable against the General Appropriations Act of succeeding years. Mr. President, for this purpose, may I ask that the sponsorship speech of this representation be inserted into the records, as well as the explanatory note contained in Senate Bill number 251, filed by Senators Pia and Alan Cayetano. So move, Mr. President.
We join the motion of the distinguished sponsor, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motions of our distinguished colleague, the Majority Leader, and Senator Escudero, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1470 under Committee Report number 9.
There being no objection to the motion, the Senate bill is suspended.
Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, Committee Report number 18 on House Bill number 4635. This is an act extending the term of the Office of the President of the Adjong Memorial State College. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved. And we ask Secretary to read the title of the measure.
An act extending the term of office of the President of the Adjong Memorial State College from 3 years to 4 years in accordance with Republic Act number 8292, otherwise known as the Higher Education Modernization Act of 1997. Further amending for the purpose Republic Act number 7935 as amended by Republic Act number 8651.
Mr. President, I move that we consider House Bill number 4635 under Committee Report number 18.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Mr. President, to co-sponsor the measure, may we recognize again the gentleman from the province of Sorsogon, Senator Francis Chis Escudero, Chairperson of the Committee on Higher Technical and Vocational Education, to deliver the sponsorship speech.
Our distinguished colleague from Sorsogon, Senator Escudero, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, there is a local bill seeking to extend the term of the President from 3 to 4 years of the SUC in order to align it with Republic Act number 8292. Mr. President, for this purpose, may I ask that the explanatory note as contained in House Bill number 4635 be made part of the records as the sponsorship speech of Congressman Adyong, as well as the sponsorship speech of this representation in regard to this local bill. So move, Mr. President.
Join the motion, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 4635 under Committee Report number 18.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders. Committee Report number 26 on Senate Bill number 1864. This is the Student Loan Payment Moratorium During Disasters and Emergencies Act. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection of the motion, motion is approved. Secretary, read the title of the measure.
An act providing for a moratorium on the payment of student loans during disasters and other emergencies.
Mr. President, move that we consider Senate Bill number 1864 under Committee Report number 26.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize Senator Francis Escudero, Chairperson of the Committee on Higher Technical and Vocational Education, to deliver his sponsorship speech.
Mr. President, thank you. Pangalawang bill kanina, resolution is Senator Lapid ito. This seeks, Mr. President, bill seeks to suspend the payment of student loans during disasters and calamities. May I ask, Mr. President, that my sponsorship speech be inserted into the records and for the explanatory note as contained in the original Senate Bill number 975 by Senator Lapid, be likewise inserted into the records. I so move, Mr. President.
Mr. President, to join the motion of the distinguished sponsor, may I also move that the co-sponsorship speech of Senator Bongo be inserted into the records as well. So move, Mr. President.
Let's act on this first. There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Thank you. Suspend?
We can suspend.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration Senate Bill number 1864 under Committee Report number 26. So move, Mr.
There be
President.
no objection, motion to suspend is in order. We'd like to just go back to item number 4. Apparently, there's no explanatory note given on the bill. Because it's a local bill, they gave us only and drafted a third reading copy.
Yes, Mr. President.
So
I
for
ask that
later
we-
time, would you like to submit?
Yes, Mr. President, I ask that explanatory note as contained in the original House bill,
Original House Bill.
be
It was
inserted.
not
in the
transmitted,
It was not
unfortunately.
transmitted yet, so pag lagay na lang.
We will get a copy, Mr. President,
Get
and
a
after
copy.
we'll submit it to the
Yes,
Secretary.
Mr. President.
Follow.
And be inserted as well.
We just instruct the secretary to get a copy and, or from the office of Senator Escudero and place it on record as the sponsorship speech.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this juncture, I move that the transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to calendar for special orders. Committee Report number 27 on House Bill number 1456. This is an act pertaining to the University of Science and Technology of the Philippines. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved. We'll ask the secretary to read the title of the measure.
An act renaming the University of Science and Technology of Southern Philippines, located in the municipality of Alubijid, province of Misamis Oriental, created and referred to as such pursuant to Republic Act number 10919 as the University of Science and Technology of the Philippines.
Mr. President, I move that we consider House Bill number 1456 under Committee Report number 27.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we again recognize Senator Francis Chis Escudero, Chairperson of the Committee on Higher Technical and Vocational Education, to deliver his sponsorship speech.
Our distinguished colleague from Sorsogon, Senator Escudero is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is a local bill once again. It's a one-page bill, in fact, seeking to rename a school, Mr. President, in Misamis Oriental. May I ask that my sponsorship speech be inserted into the records? And as with number 4 earlier, for the explanatory note in the original House bill filed by Congressman Mariano Hernandez, be inserted into the records after being obtained by our office and/or the secretary. So move, Mr. President.
We have no objection, Mr. President. We join the motion of the distinguished sponsor.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 1456 under Committee Report number 27.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1850 under Committee Report number 24. This is the new Agrarian Emancipation Act. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of this measure is that we have sponsored this particular measure, and I now move that we open the period of interpellation and recognize the sponsor, Senator Cynthia Villar, and to interpellate our Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Our distinguished Chairperson, Committee on Agriculture, Senator Cynthia Villar, to be interpolated by our distinguished Deputy Minority Floor Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros, both of which are recognized, my dear ladies.
Salamat kaayo, Mr. President. A good sponsor. Would you entertain about 4 clarificatory questions,
Yes,
please, Mr. President?
Yes,
Thank you.
Deputy Minority Floor Leader.
Thank you very much, good sponsor. First, Mr. President, in Section 2, the bill explicitly states the condonation of the 57.557 billion peso principal debt of 610,054 agrarian reform beneficiaries, tilling a total of 1,173,101.57 hectares of agrarian reform lands. Dahil ito po yung grand total, I just want to understand this in terms of the indebtedness per agrarian reform beneficiary. So, para lang linawin. Una po, kung yung isang ARB ay binigyan ng CLOA, let's say 3 years ago, at religiously naman siya nagbabayad, condoned ang balance na kailangan niyang bayaran at wala na siyang babayaran pa.
Yes.
Salamat, good sponsor. Kung ang isang ARB naman ay binigyan ng CLOA 3 years ago din at hindi siya nakakabayad forgiven ang past indebtedness, including penalties, at wala na siyang kailangan pang bayaran pa na balance.
Yes.
Salamat po, good sponsor. Kung naman ang isang ARB ay fully paid, so wala siyang matatanggap na reimbursement sa gobyerno. Tama po ba yon?
Opo, kasi this is a
Opo.
condonation of debts. Hindi tayo nagre-reward dun sa mga nagbayad na.
All right, understood, good sponsor. And huli, kung may mga ARBs naman na di pa nabibigyan kahit ng CLOA and they are not yet indebted to the government as of December 31, 2022, kailangan nilang patuloy na magbayad ng amortization, di po ba?
Pag wala pa silang CLOA, hindi nila kailangan magbayad ng amortization.
Okay. Then, maybe this is something we need to rethink. Kasi kaya po nagtagal yung kanilang CLOA usually ay
No, but
Yes,
ang
Mr.
provision ng
President.
bill, iintayin natin yung split program ng DNR together with World Bank.
Opo.
Oo.
para
Rather, the Department of Agrarian Reform with
with World
a
Bank.
project with World Bank na i-split ang mga collective CLOA at pag na-split na yon, then doon sila magkaka-loan at iyon ang i-condone natin.
I see.
Kasi malalaman na yung individual CLOA and we're giving them 3 years to do it. Yung ating World Bank at Department of Agrarian Reform will be given 3 years to split this collective CLOA para pagkatapos nilang ma-split yon, may listahan yon, di mako-condone na yon.
Salamat po, good sponsor. Kung ganon, at the least po, is the sponsor amenable at the proper time to introduce language, clearer language, to ensure na covered din po, pati ito pong huling klase ng mga ARBs na itinanong ko.
We have an amendment to clear this up.
Thank you very much, good sponsor. And kung makatulong din at the proper time yung ipopropose kong amendment kasama dun sa committee amendment ng good sponsor, then I would be grateful for her consideration, Mr.
Yeah.
President. Salamat
You're very
po, good
welcome.
sponsor. Thank you very much po. Secondly, Mr. President, in Section 5, I just wish to ask a clarificatory question on this line. Quote, the awarded land subject of this act shall not be sold, transferred, or conveyed except through hereditary succession or to the government or to the LBP or to other qualified beneficiaries through the DAR for a period of 10 years from the issuance of certificate of condonation or the
No,
CLOA.
it's not the certificate of condonation, it's the certificate of CLOA.
Just the CLOA, Certificate of Land Ownership Award. Ngayon po, good sponsor, well, baka nasagot nyo na ano, which is the CLOA title referred to? This is a follow-up question pala, Mr. President, good sponsor. So which is the CLOA title referred to here? Is it all the CLOAs or CLOAs issued after the passage of this act? This can be confusing because there are CLOAs issued, for example, in the 1990s, and the 10-year period to not sell the land has already lapsed. So, alin po yung tinutukoy nating CLOA title dito?
The
Lahat?
original CLOA, kung kailan na-issue yung CLOA. We are not repealing the law provided for by RA 6657. Remember, this is a condonation bill. We are not repealing RA 6657. So lahat ng provision ng RA 6657 will hold, except that we are condoning their loans.
Salamat, good sponsor. And in that same spirit, is the sponsor additionally at the proper time amenable to an amendment to add the phrase issued after the passage of this act? So kahit po medyo may pag-uulit, pero pagbibigay diin lang.
No,
So that,
issuance of CLOA, that is the
Issuance of
provision of RA 6657.
all
We
right.
don't want to touch RA 6657.
All right. Salamat po, good sponsor, Mr. President. So, Still on this point, one last addition on this point, Mr. President, good sponsor. Agrarian reform advocates raise the fear that the condonation might become a double-edged sword. Sa kabilang dako, o sa isang dako, it frees the farmers from paying amortization and allows them to use the money as additional capital for farm productivity. Sa kabilang dako naman, it may lead to indiscriminate and widespread leasing, selling, pawning, and conversion. Would the sponsor accept an amendment at the proper time to include lease, mortgage, and encumbrances as prohibited acts?
As
Mr.
I've said
President?
before, we are not repealing RA 6657. We're making the law very simple. We're condoning the law.
All right. So does that mean the
No.
good sponsor would not and consider it? All right. Thank you, Mr. President. Third point po. The last paragraph still of this section 5 states that, quote, the awarded agricultural lands under this act shall not be subject to conversion to other land uses for a period of 10 years from the issuance of
Ito yung
the
tinatanggal.
Certificate of Condonation or CLOA. However, Section 65 of RA 6657, as amended, introduces other restrictions on conversion that are not time-related. Halimbawa po, nakalagay sa Section 65 na yan ng RA 6657 na paulit-ulit din po nating pinag-uusapan that conversion should not be allowed when, quote, the land ceases to become economically feasible and sound for agricultural purposes, or the locality has become urbanized, and the land will have a greater economic value for residential, commercial, or industrial purposes. Will the sponsor accept at the proper time a simple amendment that would include a proviso saying that, in any event, limitations and conditions for conversion of land other than period limitations provided under Section 65 of RA 6657 as amended shall continue to be applicable, Mr. President?
Yes, we are not repealing 6657. It
Yes.
will stand.
Yes. So,
This is a condonation bill. It
Yes.
is not a repeal of RA 6657.
so even at the risk of repetition, would the sponsor consider the proposed
We will,
amendment at the proper time?
Di ba ito yung tatanggalin na natin, yung Section 5? We will remove Section 5 because it is indicated in RA 6657 already.
All right, thank you, good sponsor. And lastly, on this point, Mr. President, agrarian reform advocates have also expressed concern that the prohibition against conversion has historically proven too short. Is the sponsor amenable at the proper time to an amendment extending the prohibition against conversion to 20 years if the conditions in Section 65, ibig sabihin the land ceases to be sound for agricultural purposes, etc., do not materialize, Mr. President?
We are not repealing RA 6657. We are consistent in that. We are just condoning their loans.
So again po, Mr. President, even at the risk of being repetitious, would the sponsor consider this amendment at the proper
No,
time?
no.
No. All right. Thank you, Mr. President. And lastly, Mr. President, the bill does not propose a time frame of submission by the DAR and Land Bank of the lists required by this act referred to in Section 2. Would the sponsor be amenable at the proper time to a 60-day deadline for the submission of this list? And upon submission of the list, paano kapag may ARBs na excluded for whatever reason, how can they appeal for inclusion?
They are in the split program, and the split program is given 3 years. So, hindi lang 60 days, it's 3 years. I'm giving them 3 years to take care of the split program para maibigay ang individual CLOA sa mga beneficiary, and after that, we will condone the loan with regards to that.
And Mr. President, good sponsor, sa loob nung 3 taon iyon ng split program, yung deadline para sa submission ng list, i-consider po ba ng good sponsor na ipahabain ng 60 days yung deadline to submit that list?
What list? They are all in the split program already. Sabi ng DAR. Wala lang individual list kasi collective CLOA yan eh. So maraming may-ari ng isang CLOA. So the split program will solve this, And it's 3 years. It's not 60 days. So they have plenty of time. Ngayon, kung wala sila doon sa split program, well, they have to ask another Congress to condone the loan from there.
Yun yung,
Diba? Kasi ayoko mag-condone nang wala sa listahan.
Of course po,
Mahirap yun.
good sponsor. I do understand that, Mr. President. Ang tinutukoy ko lang po, yung list na kailangang i-compile ng Land Bank referred to in Section 2.
No,
Can we provide at the proper time by amendment na 60-day deadline?
No,
Ito pong,
meron ng list. Meron ng list yung split program, kaya lang hindi individual. It's a collective CLOA. Diba? Meron ng
Madam,
list.
opo,
Meron ng list sa Land Bank yung sa split program.
Tama.
Hindi lang individual because it's a collective CLOA. Then they will break it and they will give the individual CLOA.
Yes, Madam.
That's the split program.
Yes po. I understand that, Madam Chair. I'm referring po to the list referred to in Section 2. I cannot just see the page, forgive me. Beginning line 11, which reads, provided further that the LBP and the DAR.
That's a different one.
Yes, Madam Chair.
That's included in the condonation.
Yes, Madam Chair. So would at the proper time the Chair be willing to
There is a list for that
Opo,
also.
would the Chair be willing to accept an amendment to stipulate that there is a 60-day deadline within which the ARBs could make sure they are included in the Land Bank DAR list?
Automatically condone na yun, there's a list.
Yes, Madam
So
Chair.
they don't have to submit anything. Alam na, kilala na kung sino yun. They have a list.
Yes, Madam Chair, I do understand, and I read that here in Section 2 on the page, line 11, speaking about the Land Bank and DAR list. So I don't think it would harm, but if the good chair would consider just to include a 60-day deadline for the submission of the list para masigurado ng mga
For your
ARBs
information, it has
inclusion.
been submitted already. There is an amount. The voluntary land transfer is 10,201 ARBs worth 206,247,000. And then the area is 11,531.24. Nasubmit na yun. Kompleto na yun. And it has been condoned. May listahan sila eh.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. President. Gusto lang tiyakin itong representation kasama ng ating mga agrarian reform
Yes,
beneficiaries na walang delay at hindi sila ma-exclude sa
Condone na
listahan.
yun.
All right, salamat po. Maraming salamat, Madam Chair, for entertaining my clarificatory questions. And salamat po. Salamat kaayo, Mr. President.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
distinguished Deputy Minority Party.
Senior Deputy Minority Leader.
Session suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1850. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection to the motion. Motion is approved.
Mr. President, at this juncture and with the consent of the body, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1849 under Committee Report number 23. This is an act strengthening professionalism in the armed forces of the Philippines, amending Republic Act number 11709. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of this measure is we already closed the period of interpellations and debate. On that note, Mr. President, I now move to open the period of amendments.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
With no committee amendments, Mr. President, and considering that this is a substitute bill, I move that we open the period of individual amendments.
There being no objection, motion is approved. Period of individual amendments are open.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the sponsor of the measure, the gentleman from San Juan City, Senator Jinggoy Estrada, for his individual amendments.
The gentleman from the city of San Juan, Senator Jingo Estrada, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, in line with the recommendations of Senator Pia Cayetano during the period of interpellations last February 13, to use a more appropriate term referring to the key officers with maximum tour of duty of the armed forces of the Philippines, this representation would like to propose the following individual amendments. Number one, on page 3, line 2, after the article "the," delete the word "tenured." On the same page and line, after the word "officers," add the phrase "with maximum tour of duty." So page 3, line 2 will now read as "the key officers with maximum tour of duty," period. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion of the gentleman, motion is approved. The amendment rather is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 3, line 8, after the article "the," delete the word "tenured," and after the word "positions," insert the phrase "with maximum tour of duty." So page 3, line 8 will now read as "the key positions with maximum tour of duty mentioned." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, the amendment is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 3, line 19, delete the word "tenured," and after the word "positions," insert the phrase "with maximum tour of duty." So page 3, line 19 will now read as "key positions with maximum tour of duty mentioned in." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the amendment, amendments approved.
To be consistent with the policies being espoused by this bill, Mr. President, and considering the responsibilities given to those occupying the certain military ranks, we are proposing the following amendments. On page 4, line 5, after the word "earlier," add a comma and the phrase "or upon relief by the President." So lines 1 to 5, which contains subsection A2 of section 6 of RA 11709 as being amended under section 2 of the bill shall now read as follows. Those in the grades of Brigadier General / Commodore 07 upon reaching the age of 57 or the maximum tenure in grade as defined in this act, whichever comes earlier, comma, or upon relief by the President, semicolon. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the amendment, amendments approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 4, line 10, after the word "earlier," add a comma and the phrase "or upon relief by the President." So lines 6 to 10, which contains subsection A3 of section 6 of RA 11709, as being amended under section 2 of the bill, shall now read as follows. Number 3, those in the grades of Major General / Rear Admiral 08 upon reaching the age of 58 or the maximum tenure in grade as defined in this act, comma, whichever comes earlier, comma, or upon relief by the President, semicolon. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to amendment, amendments approved.
On page 4, line 17, after the article A, delete the word tenured, and after the word position, insert the phrase with maximum tour of duty. So page 4, line 17 will now read as, number 5, those occupying a key position with maximum tour of duty as, period. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objections to the amendment, amendments approved.
On page 6, line 3, on page 6, line 3, after the article the, delete the words active service and replace them with tenure. So page 6, line 3 will now read as the tenure in grade of officers in the, period. This is to be consistent with the term used in referring to the tenure in grade used all throughout the bill, Mr. President. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the amendment, amendments approved.
On page 9, from lines 5 to 15, delete the entire section 7, creating the Congressional Oversight Committee, and renumber the succeeding sections accordingly. I so move, Mr.
So
President.
the amendment is to remove the whole section 7.
Yes.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
This, Mr. President, this is in line with the intervention of Senator Pia Cayetano concerning the creation of congressional oversight committees, Mr.
Yes, it
President.
may not be necessary.
Yes.
Session suspended. Are there any more amendments, Your Honor?
That's
For
all,
the
Mr.
committee?
President. Yeah.
May we ask, may we recognize Senator, the Deputy Minority Floor Leader? Session suspended.
Yep.
Really, this is going to be suspended. My apologies.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1849. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, the bill is suspended for consideration. May we also ask for a clean copy, our dear colleagues, our dear Secretariat? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. President, may we ask our secretary to furnish a clean copy for all the members of the Senate. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I now move that we proceed with the privileged speeches and that we recognize, Mr. President, the distinguished gentleman from the city of Valenzuela, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, to deliver his privileged speech. So move, Mr. President.
For our distinguished colleague from the city of Valenzuela, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we're just waiting for the
Oh, the slide.
PowerPoint.
Slide. Would you want a minute suspension?
Yes, Mr. President.
Session
let's
suspended
just
for me.
fix it. Good afternoon, Mr. President, distinguished peers. Pogo-related crimes have been a hot-button issue in the Senate as of late. During the joint investigation conducted by the Committees on Ways and Means and Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, convincing data was presented to show that Pogo-related cases of kidnapping for ransom and other serious crimes have imposed serious social and economic cost on the Philippines. I will discuss this more when the committee report on the social and economic cost of Pogo is ready for discussion in plenary. Today, however, I stand before you to reveal what we have discovered so far regarding a different kind of wrongdoing in the Pogo industry. This controversy revolves around the very entities who are tasked by law to ensure that Pogos play by the rules of the game. The Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation and the Pogo third-party auditor known as the Global Com RCI Consortium. Under its charter, the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation, or PAGCOR, is mandated to regulate, authorize, and license all forms of illegal gambling in the Philippines. Executive Order Number 13, Series of 2017, authorizes PAGCOR to license offshore gaming operations located outside of Freeport areas. In essence, PAGCOR is the primary regulator of POGOs. Karamihan sa mga kumpanya ng POGO ay nasa pangangasiwa ng PAGCOR, kaya malaki ang responsibilidad ng PAGCOR sa pagsisiyasat ng operasyon ng mga POGO sa bansa. Sa pag-usbong ng mga POGO, kailangan balansin ng PAGCOR ang pagtiyak na sumusunod ang mga ito sa mga kaukulang batas at regulasyon at pagtiyak na laging tama ang binabayad na buwis ng mga POGO. One important role of PAGCOR as POGO regulator is to determine with accuracy the gross gaming revenues or receipts of offshore gaming licensees. In general, POGO licensees are required to pay a 5% gaming tax on their revenues under the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended by Republic Act number 11590. This is an important source of government revenue because, according to the law, 60% of gaming taxes collected are earmarked to fund the implementation of social development initiatives such as the Universal Healthcare Act, the Health Facilities Enhancement Program, and other government programs targeted at meeting the UN Sustainable Development Goals. PAGCOR also collects up to an additional 2% of the GGR as regulatory fees, which shall also be used to fund government programs. Determining the actual amount of gross gaming revenues is a complicated and highly technical operation. Bets and payouts are made through the POGO's online gaming platforms at lightning speed around the clock and anywhere around the globe. At the POGO investigation hearing on January 23, 2023, PAGCOR admitted that from the time POGOs officially came under its regulatory jurisdiction until now, the regulator does not have the technical know-how and expertise to determine the DGR itself. This is why, as early as 2017, it procured the services of a third-party auditor to determine and report the GGR of POGOs. According to the terms of reference of the public bidding under ITB number PB 17-035-COR-06A-07, the aim of the procurement was to develop, operate, and manage an efficient, accurate, and reliable intermediation platform for PAGCOR, operated by a competent and independent consultant to conduct real-time audit for its POGOs. According to the TOR, this will allow PAGCOR to make precise collection of the required fees and revenues from operators based on accurate audit report generated by the audit platform. By assisting PAGCOR in calculating precise gross gaming revenue figures, the third-party auditor's operations are meant to increase PAGCOR revenues and raise additional funds for government subsidization of basic social services. The third-party auditor is also an important safeguard to ensure that POGOs are paying the correct amount of taxes and fees to the government. From the description in the TOR, we can see just how vital the operations of the third-party auditor are to regulating POGOs. Given PAGCOR's lack of experience with back-end offshore gaming operation, it is the third-party auditor that enables the government to correctly assess and impose gaming taxes and regulatory fees. This is why RA 11590 requires the third-party auditor to be independent, repeatable, internationally known, and duly accredited as such by an accrediting or similar agencies recognized by industry experts. Sa madaling salita, dahil kulang sa kakayahang teknikal ang PAGCOR ng mga siwa ng offshore gaming operation, kailangan itong kumontrata ng isang third-party auditor para bantayan kung nagbabayad ng tamang buwis ang mga POGO na nasa kanilang jurisdiksyon at para matukoy kung magkano ang kinikita nila. Dahil nakasalalay sa third-party auditor ang pagtiyak sa kredibilidad ng ginagawang operasyon ng mga POGO sa bansa, klarong-klaro ang nakasaad sa batas na ang third-party auditor ay dapat lehitimo, garantisadong mapagkakatiwalaan at hasang-hasa sa paghimay at pagpataw ng mga buwis. Kaya naman naglaan ang gobyerno ng pondo para sa isang third-party auditor. After an initial failed bidding, the audit contract was finally awarded to Globalcom RCI Consortium on October 26, 2017. The consortium is made up of three corporations: Global Mioho Range Copy Incorporated or Global MRCI, High Web Trade Limited, and Compact Corporation. Global MRCI and Compact are Philippine corporations, while High Web is based in Malta. The consultancy agreement entered between PAGCOR and the consortium is for a period of 10 years. Under the contract, the consultant earns a minimum consultancy of 552,215,322 per annum. This means that the contract was worth more than 5.5 billion pesos over the 10-year effectivity period. To date, the government has already paid 842 million to the consortium. Nalinaw na malaki ang naging tiwala ng PAGCOR sa third-party auditor na Globalcom RCI Consortium dahil hindi biro ang higit 5 bilyong piso iniluluwal ng gobyerno para lamang dito. According to the consortium agreement entered into by the three members, HiWeb is a technical partner in charge of the development, installation, testing, and initial operation of the third-party audit program. Compact is the operating partner that will manage the day-to-day operation of the consortium under the consultancy agreement with PAGCOR. Meanwhile, Global MRCI is in charge of providing the bulk of the capital to finance operations of the consortium. Based on the consortium agreement, the three parties committed to raising capital contributions amounting to 2.2 billion pesos, which according to their own words, should have been paid before entering into the contract with PAGCOR. Global MRCI was obligated to put 1.1 billion pesos, while HiWeb and Compact were obligated to raise 440 million and 660 million pesos respectively. The capital commitments agreed upon by the consortium members were necessary to meet an important requirement under the PAGCOR TOR, that the winning bidder must have operating capital of at least 1 billion pesos. This would ensure the winning bidder has sufficient capital to fund the expensive, technology-driven development and operation of the third-party audit platform. Unfortunately, this is where the problems with the third-party auditor began. A review of the evidence on hand shows that the Globalcom RCI Consortium did not come even close to meeting the 1 billion capitalization requirement. Even what is worse is that it appears that the consortium submitted a falsified bank document to fool the government into believing that it met the capitalization requirement under the TOR. The 2016 audited financial statements of the three consortium members show that their total equity only amounted 228.1 million pesos. This is less than 1/4 of the required capitalization under the PAGCOR TOR. To make up for their lack of capital, the consortium submitted a document entitled Bank Certification dated June 15, 2017, allegedly issued by a certain Solel Chartered Bank. This certification reads, and I quote, we hereby certify the 25 million US dollars is for the amount of global MRCI in compliance with the PAGCOR POGO consultancy bidding as required operating capital for the award. This is equivalent to more than 1.2 billion pesos based on the exchange rate on that date. The document is allegedly signed by the CEO of Solel Chartered Bank, Govind Srivastava, and a certain Raj Asta, Executive Operations, Asia Pacific. According to its website, Solel Chartered Bank is licensed in the Union of Comoros with trade correspondence offices in Romania and the United States. However, according to the letterhead on which the bank certification was issued, the bank has an office in Suite 2704A, West Tower, Philippine Stock Exchange Center in Ortigas, Pasig City. Mr. President, there is overwhelming evidence indicating that the so-called bank certification is fraudulent. Sa ating pagsusuri, napag-alaman natin na ang bangko na nag-issue umano ng bank guarantee sa Globalcom RCI ay hindi naman pala umiiral sa Pilipinas. Kaya lumalabas na questionable ang kakayahan ng Globalcom RCI na mag-operate bilang isang third-party auditor. In a letter addressed to the Committee on Ways and Means dated February 1, 2023, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Governor Felipe Medalla confirmed that Solel Chartered Bank is not and has never been a registered financial institution in the Philippines. Therefore, Solel Chartered Bank cannot operate in the Philippines and certainly cannot issue bank certificates or letters of credit. In fact, based on the on-site visit conducted by BSP, Solel Chartered Bank cannot be found at the TechTite office. Suite 2704A West Tower is occupied by Solel Capital Corporation. It should be noted that the stamp-worth seal of Solel Capital Corporation also appears on the alleged bank certificate. According to the PAGCOR Evaluation Report, February 2, 2023, Solel Capital Corporation CEO Raj Asta Vakra disavowed any knowledge of the bank certificate and categorically denied its authenticity. In the BSP letter, it was mentioned that Astra Vakra admitted that Solel Capital Corporation is a sister company of Solel Chartered Bank, but stressed that the bank does not operate in the Philippines. However, PAGCOR personnel was able to take a photo of the international banking license of Solel Chartered Bank on display at the TechTite office during the first on-site inspection. It had mysteriously vanished by their second visit. Meanwhile, in a letter addressed to yours truly dated February 13, 2023, Govind Srivastava of Solel Chartered Bank alleged that the bank does not engage in banking business in the Philippines and did not issue the bank certification. It also stated that the bank has no records of any account under the name Globalcom RCI or Global MRCI. Attached to the letter was a sworn statement dated February 7, 2023, executed by Srivastava in New York, United States of America, attesting these same facts. Based on the circumstances, there are still many questions surrounding Solel Chartered Bank and Solel Capital Corporation. What is clear, however, is that the bank certificate submitted by Globalcom RCI Consortium to PAGCOR as evidence of their financial capability to qualify as third-party auditor is fake. This is the same conclusion drawn from the evidence by the BSP represented by Attorney Floribel M. Santos Madrid at the January 23 hearing.
So in other words, this bank certification is pure use.
We'll just play the video, Mr. President.
It appears so, Mr.
A
Chair.
snapshot of the hearing.
Ate,
So in other words, this bank certification is pure use.
It appears so, Mr. Chair.
Ginoong Pangulo, 5 taon na ang nakakalipas mula ng magpirmahan ng kontrata ang PAGCOR at Globalcom RCI. Wala man lang ni isa sa ahensya ang nakasilip sa mga kaduda-dudang ginagawa ng Globalcom RCI. Kaya ang tanong dito, nabudol nga ba ang PAGCOR o sadyang nagpabudol? Dahil mismo ang bangkong nasasangkot ay pinabulaanan ang nasabing sertifikasyon. Hindi raw galing sa kanila ang bank guarantee na naging basehan ng PAGCOR para maigawad ang kontrata sa Globalcom RCI. This alone constitutes probable cause for filing criminal charges against the consortium members for falsification of private documents, as well as several other offenses under the Government Procurement Reform Act. It also completely erases the credibility of the consortium as a consultant enjoying a multi-billion peso contract with the government. Unfortunately, the fraudulent bank certification is not the only issue observed during the bidding process. The PAGCOR TOR requires the winning bidder to have implemented a similar project in at least 3 other gaming jurisdictions with standards or at par or higher than the Philippines. To prove this, the consortium submitted a statement of all ongoing and completed government and private contracts during the bidding process. This list included 3 ongoing contracts at the time and 6 completed contracts accomplished in several gaming jurisdictions. However, a simple reading of the statement reveals that the subject contracts were with private companies. None of these were government contracts to serve the needs of a public regulator. In addition, only one project for EBWL Gaming Limited in the Bahamas mentions the deployment of an audit and management platform. The other contracts were for the design and deployment of online gaming websites only. Once again, based on a plain reading of a document submitted during the bidding process, we can see that the consortium does not meet the 3 project requirement. There is only one project on the list, completed in a single jurisdiction that involves any sort of audit platform. Additionally, the project was undertaken for a private offshore gaming company to achieve purposes completely different from the stated objectives under the TOR. And yet PAGCOR still awarded the contract to Globalcom RCI, notwithstanding this clear deficiency. Another issue is the failure of the Globalcom RCI consortium to register with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Under the request for expression of interest section of the third-party auditor bidding documents, it is specifically stated that should the winning bidder intend to implement the project under a joint venture agreement, the JVA must be registered with the SEC prior to contract execution with PAGCOR. However, in a certification dated November 25, 2022, the SEC confirmed that the Globalcom RCI consortium is not registered with them. Despite this fact, however, PAGCOR still entered into the consultancy agreement with the unregistered consortium in defiance of their own requirement. Mr. President, it is clear from our discussion that both PAGCOR officials involved in this procurement in the Globalcom RCI consortium have some explaining to do. However, while PAGCOR has regularly attended our hearings, Globalcom RCI has been nowhere to be found. And I mean this literally, Mr. President. Their offices are nowhere to be found. Over the past several months, members of my office have attempted to track down the Globalcom RCI consortium at multiple offices where it allegedly houses its third-party audit operations. According to the consultancy agreement, the consortium's address is at 18th floor World Center building in Makati. However, when Senate personnel went to check, the office was occupied by Compact Global Group. No luck in finding the third-party auditor. Next, Senate personnel attempted to check a second address at 39F Century Peak Tower in Ermita, Manila. This address was found on letters sent by Globalcom RCI addressed to PAGCOR. On separate instances, November 22, December 15, and January 20, Senate personnel were denied entry to the office due to a number of flimsy excuses. However, Ms. Jackie Lou Rivera of PAGCOR testified during the January 23, 2023 hearing that she personally inspected the Century Peak Tower office on November 29, 2022. According to Ms. Rivera, the third-party auditor had just recently moved to their operations from Gold Land in Makati. This was her testimony.
How many times did you inspect the new office in Century?
Once, sir.
That's in November 29, 2022.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And they were under construction.
There are already installed, few computers are installed already, sir. And
So-
they are fixing other
But
equipment.
were they operating? Meron bang operations?
There are few employees when we inspected, Mr. Chair.
Oo. And, but are they operating? Meron bang operation? Are they renovating?
They are, I think they are operating, sir.
Okay,
But there are only few equipment.
Mr. Chair, when you say, I think there seems to be a doubt on your part. So, honestly speaking, tanungin kita, hindi ka nagduda sa kumpanya na yan? Pagdating mo doon, hindi ka nagduda?
The office kasi, sir, is not yet fully operational. That's why only a portion of the office is
Kaya nga,
operational.
not yet fully operational, pero ilang taon na ba sila naging third-party auditor ng PAGCOR?
5 years, sir.
5 years. O 5 years hanggang ngayon, not fully operational. So, how can they made valid and accurate accounting auditing report kung hindi sila fully operational? So, hindi ka
Sir,
nagdududa.
Kaduda-duda nga naman talaga, Senator Bato. How can the office of the third-party auditor be only partially operational when POGO bets are placed online 24/7, 365 days of the year? Senate personnel also inspected the registered address of consortium member Global MRCI, which has now changed its name to Globalcom RCI Incorporated, similar to the name of the consortium. As it turns out, the address provided is in Don Bosco Village, Parañaque City. This is a residential neighborhood. In the inspection report submitted by the Parañaque LGU, they noted that there was no sign of any commercial or business operations, whether during day or at night. It is not strange that the 50% owner of the consortium, which is supposed to contribute more than 1 billion pesos in capital under the consortium agreement, does not appear to be conducting any business whatsoever at its registered address. Additionally, the consortium is not registered as a business enterprise in Makati, Manila, or Parañaque. Meanwhile, Globalcom RCI Incorporated is only registered in Parañaque, where it has been delinquent in paying local taxes since 2021. Where in the world is the third-party auditor that has collected almost 1 billion pesos from the government to date? Tila nabaliwala ang mga kwalifikasyon na nakasaad sa terms of reference at iba pang bidding documents tungkol sa pagpili ng third-party auditor. Una, peke ang bank guarantee. Pangalawa, bagsak sa 3 project requirement. Pangatlo, hindi rehistrado sa SEC. At panghuli, walang matinong opisina. Pero ibinigay pa rin ng PAGCOR ang kontrata sa Globalcom RCI. I must stress again, Mr. President, that the third-party auditor plays a vital role in regulating the POGO industry. The government stands to lose billions of pesos if gross gaming revenues are incorrectly computed. In fact, our preliminary calculations indicate that under-reporting of POGO revenues between January to August 2022 may have allowed POGOs to evade 1.9 billion pesos worth of tax liabilities to the government. In the management letter audit of PAGCOR for 2021, dated June 13, 2022, the Commission on Audit attributed a net loss of PAGCOR revenue amounting to 717.13 million in 2018 to inaccurate billing reports on gross gaming revenue of POGOs submitted by the third-party auditor. What has the third-party auditor been doing all this time while collecting fat paychecks from the government? Mr. President, based on all the evidence we have collected so far, it is clear that there is something very suspicious about the third-party auditor. The third-party auditor needs to be audited itself. At this point, it looks like a third-party scammer. Mr. President, I have much more evidence to present on the matter at hand, which cannot be covered in this speech due to the lack of time. Therefore, Mr. President, I respectfully move that this speech be referred to the Senate Committee on Accountability and Public Officers and Investigations for immediate action. It is imperative for the Blue Ribbon Committee to dig even deeper into this issue and ensure that those guilty of administrative and criminal offenses are brought to justice. Kung hindi natin mahuhuli ang mga sangkot sa anomalyang ito, magpapatuloy lamang ang kanilang pangbubudol hindi lang sa PAGCOR, kundi maging sa taong bayan. Patunayan natin, walang sino man ang makakalamang, panugutin natin ang dapat manugot. Perhaps more importantly, we must also ensure that the billions of pesos potentially missing from government coffers are promptly collected so that they can fund the delivery of quality social services to the people as originally envisioned under RA 11590. Thank you, Mr. President and esteemed colleagues.
Mr. President, if I may I just be allowed to, if the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela would yield to some questions from this representation, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President,
Yes.
I'll be more than happy to receive some questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the onset, may I just place on record my profound gratitude and commendation to our dear colleague, our brother in Christ and seatmate, Senator Win Gatchalian, for taking the cudgels, not only in his committee, Mr. President, but also here in this August chamber to give us a quick overview of what's really happening in the gaming industry, Mr. President. We thank the gentleman from Valenzuela for unveiling yet another unexplainable incident happening in the gaming industry, Mr. President. We can recall during our time in the House of Representatives, this representation together with then Congressman Sherwin Gatchalian, and when we were tackling the franchise of PAGCOR, we have been pointing it out, Mr. President, the intricacies and the absurdity of such move to have a state gaming entity na hindi lang regulator but also operator, Mr. President. Let me put that on record. Mr. President, I know that the gentleman focused more on the issue of the third party audit, Mr. President. And so may I just pose some questions, Mr. President? May we know from the distinguished gentleman if there were no due diligence conducted in obtaining the services of Global Com RCI by PAGCOR
Mr. President, thank you. Thank you, distinguished Majority Floor Leader. In our analysis, Mr. President, PAGCOR endeavored to conduct a bidding, and they have a TOR. And the TOR spelled out all the minimum requirements for a third-party auditor. But before that, Mr. President, we actually asked PAGCOR, why a third-party auditor? Why not the state gaming slash regulator monitor the POGO operation so that they can get the actual gross gaming revenue? They categorically said that they don't have the technical capability. Therefore, they look for a third-party auditor to give them the gross gaming revenue numbers. Let me just stress, Mr. President, it is important, this is absolutely important, that government determines the accurate gross gaming revenue, because that's the basis for number one, the 5% tax revenues that BIR is collecting, and number two, the 2% regulatory fees that PAGCOR is collecting. So that is where taxes are collected through that 5% tax imposed on POGOs and the 2% regulatory fee. So it's absolutely necessary that we know the gross gaming revenue, because that's the basis. But Mr. President, upon our analysis, there were a lot of violations in the terms of reference. The one I pointed out, Mr. President, is the minimum 1 billion capitalization. In the TOR, it said that the consortium should have 1 billion in terms of capitalization.
That's the minimum requirement, Mr.
That's the minimum requirement, Mr. President. But upon our perusal of their annual financial statements in 2016, the minimum capitalization, or the capitalization of the three-member consortium, is only 240 million. No? So far, only a fourth of the 1 billion requirement. So what this consortium did is they issued, or they gave PAGCOR a bank guarantee worth 1 billion pesos. No? But obviously, that bank guarantee was disavowed by the bank, by supposedly the bank itself. No, they said that they did not issue any bank guarantee. They did not issue. They don't have Globalcom RCI in their list of customers. And to make matters worse, during that time in 2017, the Bangko Sentral said that they did not authorize, or they don't have any Solel chartered bank registered under their database. No? So, in other words, Mr. President, I cannot remove this from my thinking that the bank guarantee is pure use. It's falsified, no? And but that is an important basis for PAGCOR to award that third-party auditor contract.
Mr. President,
So therefore, if I may,
Please.
Majority Leader, the budol was, escalated from one level to another level, then to a higher level. So a series of budol incidents happened in those transactions. If I were to believe, please go ahead.
And you are correct, Mr. Chairman, our presiding officer, Senator Bato.
25 million.
And when you look at the terms of reference, these are minimum requirements, Mr. President.
Yes.
Minimum requirements. It's so glaring that no man in his right mind would not even realize na nabubudol ka. Ito'y budol na pinapayagan mo sa iyong sarili. So, Mr. President, and before I go that, Mr. President, I know this is not part of the third party, but I would just like to put on record, you and I were in the House of Representatives when we tackled this franchise of PAGCOR. I don't remember a single provision in the charter that someday, come this year, whatever, Mr. President, that PAGCOR will actually come up with this kind of regulation in this scenario, in this setup of having regulate this kind of gaming, which is a POGO, Mr. President. So I would just like to put that on record, that even as we speak right now, I don't think that PAGCOR has the has the right, has the jurisdiction to actually regulate POGOs. I would like to just point that out. I don't know if the good gentleman will agree with this representation.
But Mr. President, thank you for that point. No, just to go back to that bank certification. To be exact, Sorel Chartered Bank allegedly issued $25 million. That's about 1.3 billion pesos. But definitely, we reached out to Sorel Chartered Bank through email, and they responded to us that they categorically said they did not issue any guarantee to any Globalcom RCI. Let alone, they also mentioned that they are not present in the Philippines. Although pictures, PAGCOR took pictures that they have a plate in their office saying that that Solel Chartered Bank is has a name in that Tectite office. But going to your comment, good majority floor leader. Definitely, no. We also detected conflict of interest on the part of PAGCOR insofar as regulation and operation is concerned. On one hand, PAGCOR wants to earn a lot of revenue, meaning the more, the merrier for them. But on the other hand, they're also regulating. And regulating entails very strict compliance. No? Some of the strict compliance there can lead to cancellation of licenses, closing down of offices. So on one hand, you want more revenue, but on one hand, you're also closing down offices. So this is a classic case of conflict of interest. And
when you're regulating and operating at the same time.
And and let me just be fair to PAGCOR, that's actually present in many of our regulatory bodies. One of the investigations of our good chairman of the Public Services Committee, CAAP, it was revealed during that hearing that CAAP is also embroiled in a sort of conflict of interest activity. On one hand, it's operating, on one hand, it's regulating. The same with PAGCOR.
Yeah.
But of course, PAGCOR is earning 15 billion pesos a year in terms of revenue. So it's a much bigger operation, and definitely we need to review its role, being an operator and a regulator at the same time.
And you have mentioned, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, that while PAGCOR is earning billions and billions of pesos, we have no idea what they are doing there. For example, this is a classic example of lack of monitoring and mechanisms to check on them. I go back to the terms of reference, Mr. President, distinguished colleague. I was looking at the terms of reference that the distinguished gentleman was talking about. It says here the projected cost service fee to a third-party auditor is 600 million pesos a year. So for 10 years, that's 6 billion pesos, Mr. President. May we know if the good gentleman would have any idea whether this is a usual price for a third-party auditor, Mr. President?
That's an excellent question, Mr. President. Unfortunately, in my experience as a former chief executive, softwares like this, it's very hard to come up with a market price, no? Because there's no tangible asset. There's no asset, so to speak. No, your asset is all codes and it's in the computer, Mr. President.
And it changes by the second.
Correct. So there's no market price. That's why a bidding is very important, and following your minimum requirements in your terms of reference is very important because it will assure you that whoever comes in can perform and is credible. Credibility is very important, Mr. President, in this endeavor because it gives the gross gaming revenue comes from them. Wala nang iba, Mr. President. That means there's ultimate trust and confidence to the third-party auditor that it will give government the accurate amount in terms of gross gaming revenue to the last centavo. So credibility is important. technical experience and expertise is important. Of course, capitalization is also important. Everything, all of those were specified in the terms of reference, and we demonstrated earlier that the terms of reference were violated in the course of their selection.
Without even going further or studying harder in this particular case. Common sense lang po yung kailangan. And I will borrow the words of our presiding officer na budol. Itong pagkorho, willing budol. Willing budol.
Parang
ang
ganun na
tawag
ho,
dito,
Mr. President. Parang ganun lumalabas. Like, for example, the Solel Chartered Bank, Mr. President, to be honest about it, we just stumbled upon this when we were reviewing the documents. STSRO, my staff sent me that bank certification, and I told them, in my 48 years of existence in the Philippines, I've never come across a Solel Chartered Bank. So we called the BSP on a Sunday, and I have to thank BSP because they responded right away. And they sent us a certification on Monday, certifying that there's no such bank registered or operating in the Philippines. So they cannot issue any form of bank guarantee to any entity in the Philippines.
Meaning they did not issue at all any bank certification to Globalcom RCI. Wow.
You know, Mr. Good Sponsor, if you have just spoken about credibility, and this company has started in the wrong footing by using spurious documents. So it is not a remote possibility that this third-party auditor may connive with some, some POGO operators who are being run by, bad businessmen. So pwede lang sabihin na i-reduce mo muna yung aming yung reporting mo dyan sa aming gross gaming revenue, and isisettle na namin sa inyo yan. Whatever transaction na pwedeng gawin nila to the detriment of the government. We will be losing because nagsimula na nga sila ng kalukuhan, mali yung binibigay nila ng mga dokumento, so hindi malayo na lulukuhin pa tayo nito in the succeeding transactions, Mr. President.
And that's why the state regulator, gaming regulator, which is PAGCOR, should do its job, Mr. President.
But Mr. President, I commend the investigative powers and prowess of the presiding officer, Senator Bato de la Rosa. It's not remote that the gross gaming revenue is undervalued, so that the POGO operators will pay less. And in return to that savings, quote-unquote savings, the third-party auditor may get a rebate. So it's not remote because the third-party auditor, as we demonstrated, has no technical experience, no capital, no credibility. So they can tell us anything under the sun, and PAGCOR will just accept it.
Precisely.
So, Mr. President, that's why the good presiding officer, with his experience, is absolutely correct. That is a possibility of undervaluing.
Highly probable, highly possible. Yes, Senator Grace po is recognized.
Just a rejoinder, Mr. President. I would like to manifest my support for the good chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means for the utmost dedication in forging an effective governance regime for the casino industry in the country. Malinaw na naging finding ng committee report on the economic and social costs of POGO, which I hope we will be able to circulate soon for support within the Senate. There's an inherent conflict of interest with PAGCOR's role as regulator and operator of POGOs. And if we do not resolve this, I fear that Filipinos will continuously be on the losing side of the table. I again take this opportunity to relay my deep gratitude to the chair of for the incisive and comprehensive investigation on the POGO industry, as well as on PAGCOR's own failure to regulate the said industry. I hope that whoever approved this contract between the auditor and PAGCOR will be held liable. And also, I think that we should also bear in mind that the money being handled by PAGCOR is even bigger than the most established banks in the Philippines, like BDO or BPI. That's all, Mr. President.
I thank the good gentle lady from Pangasinan, Cebu, uh, Iloilo, sorry, Iloilo.
Republic of the Philippines.
Republic of the Philippines, for her support and words of encouragement. And definitely, there's structural issues within our gaming industry, and we need to address that. And we need to also look into this matter because, as I mentioned earlier, the POGO operations is a 24/7 operations. And we need to already look into this because how can we be assured that government is getting its fair share in terms of taxes?
Yes,
Mr. President, I'd like to thank
Senator Grace po is recognized.
I'd like to thank our colleague from Valenzuela for his acknowledgement, saying that I'm from Pangasinan. I did the correction that I'm not from Cebu. Although, if they want to adopt me, it will be really my pride and honor as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
I stand corrected, Mr. President. Iloilo is the more accurate province, Mr. President.
May I continue, Mr. President?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Mr. Leader.
Mr. President, I have heard so many things about the management of PAGCOR since I became a public servant in God knows when, Mr. President. I have been a public servant for about 20 years now, Mr. President. I have yet to hear an effective PAGCOR management ever since, Mr. President. While hope springs eternal, we feel that under the new administration, we will see a better PAGCOR management. But unfortunately, Mr. President, I had this belief that really, it's about time that we have to make that decision on whether or not PAGCOR is a regulator or an operator. Whether or not we will continue promoting the game of chance all over the country at the expense of our young people. Yung mga kabataan natin na tinuturuan natin na magsunog ng kilay, mag-aral, magsikap, magtiyaga. At on the other hand, if the government's policy would be to expand this gaming industry to promote the game of chance, to depend on the game of chance, Mr. President, instead of working hard, then it will continue to haunt us, Mr. President. Kung ano yung tinanim, yun po yung aanihin. For my next question, Mr. President, may I ask the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela if he would agree, and this is just an idea, perhaps to call the attention of the Commission on Audit to conduct a parallel review or a special audit on global COMRCI and its transactions with PAGCOR?
Yeah, but before the sponsor answer the question, let me interject, Majority Leader, regarding what you said. Alam mo, every hearing involving PAGCOR, I keep on saying this. You know, how I wish the new PAGCOR president or the top hunso of PAGCOR is there, present, physically present during our hearings, so that for him to know firsthand the anomalies that were being uncovered during our committee hearings. But I don't know kung naka-attend ba yan ng kahit isang hearing natin, Mr. Good Sponsor, yung bagong PAGCOR chairman or president?
Not in the Committee on Ways and Means, Mr. President.
Also in my committee, hindi rin sumisipot. Kaya nga, tayo dito sa Senado, gustong-gusto natin na pagandahin nila yung pagpatakbo nila sa kanilang trabaho using our oversight function. But then again, parang hindi sila interesado na maayos. Kaya I keep on calling out the PAGCOR top hunso to be present during our committee hearings. That's all. You may answer the question now.
Yeah.
Sponsor.
Yeah. Before I answer the question, Mr. President, I share the sentiment of the good presiding officer, Senator Bato de la Rosa. PAGCOR is under a new management, and this is a good opportunity for them to shed light on all of these anomalies, all of these inconsistencies. It's also good for us to hear their direction
Yes.
so far as where PAGCOR is going in light of what's happening right now, conflict of interest, POGOs, and others. So I share your sentiment, and I support that the statement that the head honchos of PAGCOR should pay us a visit and shed light on this matter, Mr. President.
Yes, if you can remember, I keep saying, please help us help you. Diba? Please help us help you by being present. We have to help each other. But I think our appeals fell into deaf ears.
Yeah. But Mr. President, curiously, I saw the new PAGCOR president, Mr. Tenko, being interviewed on TV several times. So I think public appearance is more important compared to the Senate hearing. I hope he will give us some time also. If he gave the media a chance, hopefully he will give the senators a chance. Mr. President, to answer...
Before you answer my question, Mr. President, let me also state for the record that when I heard about the assumption of Mr. Altenco, who is also my kababayan from Bulacan, I had this feeling that the management and the operations of PAGCOR will change. And I have to say, Mr. President, that at this time, I'm a bit disappointed that I have not heard of any reforms or anything that the management of PAGCOR is doing in order to correct these mistakes, these numerous mistakes. Numerous, because, Mr. President, we can no longer count how many times we have called their attention to look into these issues hounding our gaming industries. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. And just to answer the question of our good majority leader, yes, under RA 11590, COA can undertake post-audit or independent verification of the gross gaming revenue, and the Senate can also request from COA to do a fraud audit. We have done this many, many times on many occasions, and we can formally request from COA to conduct a fraud audit in the operations of the third-party auditor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, for agreeing with this representation. I was just alarmed by the fact that PAGCOR itself stated that it learned through a news report that Soleil Chartered Bank issued a statement denying the issuance of a bank certification to Global RCI, PAGCOR's third-party auditor for offshore gaming licensees. And I think there may be a need, Mr. President, to also conduct a parallel revalidation of documents submitted by Global RCI, as well as the audit it has conducted on offshore gaming operations. My next question, Mr. President, to a distinguished gentleman from the city of San Juan, is that what's Valenzuela, Mr. President, sorry.
Pagod na, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I would just like to ask Mr. President if there was a contract between Global RCI and PAGCOR. Was the contract between them previously amended, reviewed, or reassessed since 2017? Because, Mr. President, I wanted to ask this question because I look upon some records here, Mr. President, and this is not the first time.
Perfect.
This is not the first time that Global RCI was flagged down by the government, Mr. President. To note, the Commission on Audit raised the following in its 2019 annual audit report. In its observations and recommendations, the COA flagged the contract price stipulation in the consultancy contract between PAGCOR and Global RCI as, and I quote, apparently unfavorable to the government. This is because the contract price noted by the audit team was a total annual amount of 552.215 million pesos, or 10% of PAGCOR's net monthly gaming revenue earned from the existing POGO operators being audited within the month, whichever is higher, close quote, Mr. President. Madam President, COA noted that the price stipulation was highly favorable on the part of the consultant whenever substantial increase in the audited income will be reported. Hindi lang po yun, Madam President. Nakalagay din po dito, while COA noted that PAGCOR has signed an agreement with Globalcom RCI as of July 23, 2020. Ito ay July 23, 2020 naman. To implement COA's recommendation to amend the contract price to address COA's comment. These new findings will shed light into this agreement with Globalcom RCI. So muli, Madam President, was the contract between Globalcom RCI and PAGCOR previously amended, reviewed, or reassessed since 2017, considering na meron po silang history, Madam President?
Thank you for that, Mr. President. Indeed, that came out in the COA report, Mr. President. And the long and short of it, Mr. President, that the third-party auditor gets 10%. 10%. It gets 10%. Yeah, it gets 10% of the 2% regulatory fees based on the aggregate gross gaming revenue. In other words, Mr. President, pag lumalaki po ang kita ng PAGCOR, lumalaki rin yung kanilang singil, no? At and COA flagged them that this is not allowed or this is illegal. So they had the move to amend the contract after that COA report. However, I'm not sure on where that amended contract is. I understand from the hearing that it's still pending and that contract is under discussion. That's what I understand from PAGCOR. But definitely, Mr. President, the bottom line here is COA flagged PAGCOR that the 10% of the 2% regulatory fee is not allowed. And that triggered a renegotiation on the part of PAGCOR.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. But unfortunately, despite the reports and observations and recommendations of COA na unfavorable po ito sa ating pamahalaan, meron pa ring PAGCOR na willing budol agency of the government, willing budol agency na patuloy na maggatasan ang ating pamahalaan mula po sa mga unscrupulous behavior ng mga taong ito mula dito sa Globalcom RCI. Madam President, one last point that I'd like to raise is the fact that I believe this representation believes the importance of having independent auditors. I'm sure the gentleman from Valenzuela will agree that it is important merong kang independent auditor. But my last question, Madam President, is how do we promote auditor independence in the government in future arrangement or contracts with other third-party auditors? Considering what we saw here, Madam President, yung minimum requirements ng terms of reference, hayagan na pinikitan na lang at umagri na lang ng basta-basta, papaano pa po doon sa mga mas komplikado, mas malalim, o siyempre yung mga gustong manloko, papaikot-ikutin ka at dadalhin ka sa kung saan-saan, merong mga rider yung mga kontrata, etc. Papaano pa ho yun, Madam President? So again, my only question that I'd like to raise on the floor, considering that the gentleman from Valenzuela heard this committee hearings, how do we promote auditor independence in the government in future arrangements or contracts with other third-party auditors?
Mr. President, I share your concern, Mr. President, and if government agencies will be true to its mandate to protect the interests of the Filipino people, to protect the interests of the country, and just follow their own terms of reference, we won't be in this predicament and will be more confident that the contracts they enter into are in line with getting the best for our country. However, Mr. President, in the speech that I made, the violations is as simple as not following their own terms of reference. It's as simple as that, Mr. President. And also, we also saw that some of the agencies, in this particular case, PAGCOR, are not vigilant, or maybe they um, they uh, they were willing victims, Mr. President, in terms of allowing this third-party auditor to be awarded with a multi-billion contract. Mr. President, if they were vigilant, if they were really concerned, the first thing that they should have done is to do a thorough due diligence on the documents as well as the bank. No? Like I said, Solel Charter Bank, we've been here for a long time in our country, but we've never heard of such bank operating. And a simple inspection or a simple inquiry from the BSP would suffice.
Google lang, Mr. President.
Correct, but they never took the extra mile, or they never took the extra due diligence to determine whether the documents are accurate or spurious, Mr. President. So my point, Mr. President, I'm equally disappointed and equally discouraged. This is a multi-billion industry, and Pogos will try very hard to reduce the amount of payment to government. I mean, I think that's a tendency that we have seen in the past. So it's very important that the third-party auditor is of high credibility and unquestionable expertise, so that we will get the right amount and government will get paid. We have to remember, Mr. President, we have a law, no? RA 11590. And this law, we enacted this law precisely to earn revenues from POGOs. But that potential is hinged on one entity, which is the third-party auditor. But now we are seeing that the third-party auditor has no capability and has no credibility. So how can we be confident that the law that we enacted is at optimum and we're paying the right taxes? No? If you ask me personally, I'm not confident, Mr. President. And the statement of our good chairman of Peace and Order about potential under declaration, it can happen. We also saw in our documents that the declaration of gross gaming revenue in the BIR versus PAGCOR is grossly undervalued, meaning POGOs are paying a little bit more in PAGCOR compared to the BIR. And we computed close to about 1.9 billion in terms of gaming taxes were lost because of that under declaration to the BIR. So, Mr. President, there's a tendency to undervalue. That's why the importance of the third-party auditor cannot be overstated, because dyan nakasalalay po yung buhay natin.
Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo, at lalo na po kung ang ating mga kawani ng pamahalaan ay willing budol o willing victim, then classic case of corruption comes in, Mr. President.
Mr. President, just to emphasize, ang perang umiikot po sa Pogo is about 200 billion pesos. No? That's the gross gaming revenue in 2019. That's the height. So that's the amount that umiikot po. No? Ganong kalaki po. Just to give you an idea, the power sector is about 500 billion pesos. Kalahati po ng power sector ang Pogos in terms of size, Mr. President. No? So it's a big industry, and a large amount of money goes around. That's why it's not, it cannot be discounted that undervaluing can happen. And the third-party auditor can be part of that undervaluation.
And that's why it's needed and it is important, as mentioned by the distinguished gentleman from the city of Valenzuela. You're talking about 200 billion pesos, Mr. President, Madam President. The Bible says, and let me quote, that it's not money which is the root of all evil. It's actually the love for money which is the root of all evils. Madam President, I also remember during the time of our distinguished colleague being the chairperson of the Committee on Energy, I remember in one of his hearings, the Department of Energy was tasked that all generation companies, transmission service providers, system operator, distribution utility shall be subjected to a performance assessment and audit once every 3 years or as directed by DOE para ho mapangalagaan natin yung tinatawag na accountability at transparency. I have been a representative of SIBAC party list for almost a decade, Madam President, where I first met the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela City. And the Transparency International would always define corruption with a formula. Corruption is equal to monopoly plus discretion minus accountability. If you put so much power, discretionary powers, in one particular agency without accountability, without transparency, then corruption will flourish. And that's why third-party auditors are important. And it's good to note, Madam President, that this issue must be addressed because one of the reasons why we wanted to engage the services of third-party auditors was to ensure transparency and accountability, which cannot be achieved if the third-party auditor itself is not trustworthy. Maraming salamat, Madam President. Maraming salamat sa ating kaibigan, seatmate, brother, Senator Win Gatchalian.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the good Majority Leader for expressing his support. And indeed, this is not just an ordinary violation of the TOR, Mr. President. My analysis of this is more than that. Mas malalim po to, Mr. President, because the money involved is so big. And the violations, Mr. President, are so blatant that my own personal analysis is this is more than just a violation of the TOR. And we need to look into this, Mr. President, because accountability is very important. Trust of the Filipino people is very important. We're mandated to look into this type of violations. And it's important also that people are held to account. And that's how we build trust among our constituency.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela. Madam President, I move that we refer the privileged speech of Senator Win Gatchalian and all the interpellations, manifestations thereon to the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations. So move, Madam President.
So referred.
Madam President, at this juncture, and with the permission of the body, I move that we proceed with the privileged speech and recognize the distinguished gentleman from Bicol Region and the Republic of the Philippines, Senator Robin Hood Padilla, to deliver his privileged speech. So moved, Madam President.
Senator Robin Padilla is recognized.
Maraming salamat po, aming ginang Pangulo. Maraming salamat po sa ating pinunong mayorya. A'udhu billahi minasyaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Bismillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ginang tagapangulo, sa mga minamahal nating miyembro ng bulwagang ito, ako po ay tumitindig sa pulpito na ito sa personal at kolektibong pribilehyo upang manindigan patungkol po sa isyong dapat sana ay noon pa ay natuldukan na. Ang tinutukoy ko po ay ang pilit na pagbubukas ng usaping kung nararapat bang usigin ng International Criminal Court ang dating Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Na tila ba nakakalimutan ng ilan ang negatibong implikasyon dala nito sa isang bansang buong pusong pinagsilbihan ng dati nitong pinuno. Taong 2016 ng pagkatiwalaan ng 16.6 milyong Pilipino si Mayor Rudy mula sa siyudad ng Davao upang maging ika-16 na Pangulo ng Republika. Ang tiwalang ito ay bumukal mula sa masidhing pagkauhaw ng ating mga kababayan para sa pagbabago. Hindi po natin nalilimot ang pagod na nararamdaman ng ating mga kababayan pagdating sa issue ng kriminalidad at illegal na droga na isa sa mga nagiging matinding hadlang tungo sa ating pag-ahon mula sa kahirapan at pag-unlad bilang isang lipunan. Dala ang pangakong dadating ang pagbabago. Lahat tayo ay naging saksi kung paano pinagkatiwalaan ng sambayanang Pilipino si dating Pangulong Duterte. Simula nang mahalal siya sa pwesto hanggang sa pagtatapos ng kanyang termino. 2 taon matapos ng kanyang tagumpay noong 2016 na halalan, ayon sa resulta ng Pulse Asia Survey noong 2018, sa ikalawang taon ng termino ng dating Pangulo, 69% ng mga Pilipino ang nagsasabing ang pagsupil sa illegal na droga ang pinakaimportanteng pinagtagumpayan ng ating dating Pangulong Duterte. Maging sa kasagsagan po ng pandemya na masasabi nating humamon sa tatag ng ating pamunuan, na natiling mataas ang rating ni dating Pangulong Duterte sa gradong 91% noong Setyembre 2020 at Nobyembre 2020. Ayon rin po yan sa Pulse Asia. Kaya naman, nakakadismaya po, hindi lamang para sa inyong lingkod, kundi sa milyong-milyong Pilipino na nagtitiwala kay dating Pangulong Duterte na ang balita ay ibinubuhay na naman po ng International Criminal Court ang mga issue nila. Sa kasamaang palad, nalulungkot po tayo sapagkat itong kanilang inasang alang-alang at ibinibintang na kaso, ito daw po ay ang krimen laban sa sangkatauhan o crime against humanity sa ilalim po ng Article 7, Talata 1A ng statute. Para po sa kaalaman ng marami, ang krimen na isinumite sa ICC ay sinasabing naging laganap po sa buong Pilipinas sa pagitan ng ika-1 ng Hulyo 2016 hanggang sa ika-16 ng Marso 2019. Sa konteksto ng tinatawag na digmaan laban sa droga. Gayon din sa lugar ng Davao sa pagitan ng ika-1 ng Nobyembre 2011 hanggang sa ika-30 ng Hunyo 2016. Ito po ang isang statement ng ating kalihim mula po sa executive, mula po sa secretary ng DOJ na siyang dapat na magbibigay po ng pahintulot sa ICC. Ang sabi niya, malaking insulto sa ating lahat kapag pinapasok daw po natin ng ICC, para na po nating sinabi na walang kwenta ang ating hustisya sa bayang ito. Atin pong ipinupunto lamang na siya ring pinaninindigan ng ating kagawaran ng katarungan. Walang jurisdiction ang ICC sa sitwasyon sa ating bansa sa ilalim ng prinsipyo ng non-intervention o hindi panghihimasok o pangingialam sa sovereign equality gaya ng nakasaad sa United Nations Charter. Para po sa kaalaman ng ating mga kababayan, lahat po ng estado ay may karapatan na magsagawa ng kanilang mga gawaing panloob nang walang panghihimasok mula sa labas. Ito po ang prinsipyo ng non-intervention o hindi pangingialam. Ang sovereign equality naman po ay kumikilala sa pantay na katayuan ng mga estado sa loob ng internasyonal na komunidad. Sa madaling sabi po, dapat kilalanin ng ibang bayan o pandaigdigang hukuman tulad ng ICC na tayo bilang isang bansa ay may sariling kasarinlan, pagkakakilanlan at soberenya. Tayo po ay bansang malaya at kumikilos at higit sa anupaman ay hindi dapat basta-bastang panghimasukan. Higit sa lahat, hindi po tau-tauhan ang ating mga tao sa gobyerno. Hindi po mga kengkoy ang mga nasa loob ng kagawaran ng hustisya. Lalong-lalo na po kung tayo ay una nang tumugon sa mahalagang hinaing ng ilan sa ating mamamayan sa harap ng International Criminal Court. Alinsunod po sa principle of complementarity na kinikilala rin po ng mismong ICC, ang ating pamahalaan ay may karapatan at dapat na maunang umako ng responsibilidad na usigin ang anumang naiulat na international crime. Hindi po tayo nagkulang, Ginang Pangulo. Alinsunod po sa Article 18, Talata 2 ng statute, ang ating pong gobyerno ay humiling ng agarang pagpapaliban sa nasabing pag-uusig. Nariyan po ang pagsusuri na isinagawa ng ad hoc panel ng DOJ na nagripaso pa sa mga kasong administratibo at kriminal laban sa mga tauhan ng Philippine National Police na sangkot sa anti-illegal drug operation ng nagdaang administrasyon. Kinatigan rin po ng ating kagawaran ang writ of amparo na nagbibigay ng proteksyon sa mga petitioners ng kaso. Binigyan buhay din po ng Interagency Committee sa pamumuno ng kalihim ng DOJ sa ilalim ng Administrative Order Number 35 at ng United Nations Joint Program on Human Rights ang pagtutok sa mga kaso ng extrajudicial killings, sapilitang pagkawala, torture at iba pang malubhang paglabag sa karapatan sa buhay, kalayaan at seguridad ng mga tao. Bukod pa po ito sa agarang pagsisiyasat na isinagawa ng Internal Affairs Service ng PNP para disiplinahin ang di umano'y mga may kinalaman na tauhan ng pulisya. Malinaw po, ang ICC ay maaari lamang magkaroon ng jurisdiction kung saan nabigo ang sistema ng hustisya ng bansa. Tinatanggap po ba natin na walang saysay ang ating pampublikong institusyon, ang ating kagawaran ng katarungan, ang kalipunan ng ating sektor para sa pampublikong seguridad? Kung atin pong maalala, formal na po tayong humiwalay sa Rome Statute ng ICC noong pang ika-17 ng Marso 2018. Ganap na po itong nagbisa matapos ang isang taon. Sa makatwid, hindi na po tayo tali sa ICC. Gayunman, ang ating paghiwalay ay hindi nangangahulugan ng pagpapabaya. Hindi po ibig sabihin nito na tayo po ay tumatalikod sa issue at hinahayaan na lang po natin ito. Hindi po. Patuloy pa rin ang pagsisikap ng gobyerno ng Pilipinas na ganap na palakasin ang mekanismo para tunay na mausig ang mga nagkasala. Patuloy pa rin pong gumagana ang ating hustisya. Hindi po natin sisiilin ang kalipunan ng ating karapatang pantao. Higit sa lahat, hindi po tayo isang demokratiko at malayang bansa kung hahayaan natin makulong sa pag-uusig at paglilitis ng mga banyaga. Tayo po ay hindi na alipin ng mga banyaga. Tayo po hindi na pwedeng utos-utusan ng mga banyaga. Hindi po papayag si Andres Bonifacio. Hindi rin papayag si Jose Rizal. Mga mahal kong kababayan, ginoong tagapangulo, sa punto pong ito, akin pong inaakda ang resolusyon bilang 488 na nagsususog ng mariing pagtatanggol sa dating Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte, ang ika-16 na Pangulo ng Republika ng Pilipinas sa anumang investigasyon o pag-uusig ng International Criminal Court. Ginoong Pangulo, bilang panghuli, akin pong liliwanawin na kahit na sino pong naging Pangulo ng Pilipinas, kahit sino pa po, akin din pong ihahain ito kung darating ang mga dayuhan dito at kanilang iimbestigahan. Sapagkat ito po, mga mahal kong kababayan, kahit kanino po nilang gawing Pangulo, isa pong malaking insulto ito sa atin kapag meron pong dumating ditong banyaga at utusan po tayo. At sila mismo ang magkukulong sa ating Pangulo. Mahal kong Ginoong Pangulo, tapos na po ang panahon ni Sakay. Maraming salamat po.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Robin Hood Padilla. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we recognize Senator Jinggoy Estrada. For his manifestation, Mr.
The
President.
gentleman from San Juan, Senator Jingoy Estrada, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I would like to associate myself with the speech of the good gentleman from Nueva Ecija and Bicol, my good friend, Senator Robin Hood Padilla. Mr. President, earlier this week, I filed proposed Senate Resolution number 492, expressing the strong opposition of the Senate on the resumption of the International Criminal Court investigation on crimes committed during the Duterte administration. Mr. President, in the 15th Congress, I have voted in favor of our accession to the Rome Statute, creating ICC that would deal with the most horrific crimes, namely genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes of aggression, cognizant of the fact that this institution will be respectful of our domestic institutions and of our sovereignty. Mr. President, the complementarity principle governs the exercise of the ICC's jurisdiction. The statute recognizes that states that have the first responsibility and right to prosecute crimes, and that is what is happening right now in our country. The ICC may only exercise jurisdiction when the domestic legal system fails to do so. And this is not the case here, Mr. President. In our country, the justice system still is very, very active and is working in our country. And in fact, even the incumbent president of our country, President Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr., said the investigation would be and I quote, the investigation would be an intrusion into our internal matters and a threat to our sovereignty. Furthermore, President Marcos said, and I quote, I feel that we have in our police and our judiciary a good system. We do not need assistance from any outside entity. Kaya naman po mga mahal na Pangulo, itong pinapupunta, kung sino man ang pinupunta ng ICC dito sa ating bansa, kung sino man Poncio Pilatong prosecutor, itong mga puting unggoy na ito, hindi na dapat papasukin dito sa ating bansa because that will be an exercise in futility, Mr. President. That's why, Mr. President, I am confident that the DOJ is not remiss in its primary mission to uphold the rule of law. We should trust our justice system. At katulad nga ng sinabi ng aking matalik na kaibigan na si Senator Padilla, hindi tayo dapat magpauto, hindi tayo dapat sumunod kung ano mang instructions na ibibigay sa atin nito mga dayuhang unggoy na ito. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Estrada. Manifestation is noted.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, the distinguished minority leader, Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Hontiveros, would also like to make a manifestation. I move
And-
that she be recognized, Mr. President.
And after her, the gentleman from Davao del Sur is also raising his hand. But before that, we'll recognize the Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Hontiveros, who is celebrating her birthday soon. Is recognized.
Salamat, Mr. President. And for your implicit greeting. Salamat po, Mr. President. Just a brief manifestation, Mr. President. Siguro sa maraming mahalagang puntong binanggit, just on 3 points. For starters, Mr. President, anyway, umaasa tayo na madidinig itong mga resolution ng Senado. And siguro yun po yung unang sasabihin ko, tuwing tatanungin po ako, Mr. President, tungkol sa mga resolusyong ito, sinasabi ko that they will be treated as resolutions of the Senate. I-refer po sa appropriate committee, didinigin sa hearing, at matatalakay natin dito sa plenaryo, as they should be. Bilang brief manifestation ko sa mga privileged speeches ngayon, tatlo lamang po, Mr. President. Una, patuloy kong ina-appreciate yung isa o ilan sa mga unang sinabi ng Department or rather ng Secretary of Justice kaugnay ng isyung ito. Hindi ko malimutan, pinangawakan ko po yung isang sinabi nila nung maaga pa na not out of compliance but out of committee and out of courtesy, mag-furnish sila ng impormasyon sa International Criminal Court kung mahinog na yung prosesong ito. So that's the first thing, Mr. President, na dagdag po dun sa investigasyon na isinagawa ng PNP Internal Affairs Service na binanggit nung isang nag-privilege speech natin, the good gentleman, ay sinabi na rin po ng Secretary of Justice yung punto pong iyon. Pangalawa, Mr. President, importante po yung mga petsa o yung mga taon. Dahil totoo, noong March 2018, nag-notify ang ating gobyerno na tayo ay mag-e-exit na sa International Criminal Court. At yan pong notification pong iyon at yung pag-exit, yung tuluyang pag-exit na nga po natin sa ICC ay nag-take effect na nga po noong March 2019 or the following year. Kaya yung mga panahon mula March 2019 hanggang taong 2021 na sakop ng balaksanang iimbestigahan ng ICC ay sa panahon na hindi na po tayo party sa Rome Statute. Subalit, inote po natin na yung gustong imbestigahan ng ICC ay sumasakop sa mga taong 2011 hanggang 2016 at 2016 hanggang 2021. Kaya't siguro sa mga taong 2011 hanggang March 2019, kung kailan nag-take effect na talaga ang ating pag-exit sa ICC, ay relevant pa rin o live pa rin yung inquiry na gustong gawin o investigasyon ng ICC. And last but not the least, Mr. President, good gentleman, na brief manifestation ko sa privilege speech, na-appreciate ko po yung sinabing ang National Police at ang judiciary natin ay mayroon ng ginagawa kaugnay sa buong isyung ito. Siguro isa sa pinakamahalagang nagawa na po ng National Police bukod sa investigasyon ng IAS ay yung sinabi po nila ng PNP na mayroon na ngang mga 6,000 mga deaths na naganap sa habang isinasagawa yung mga anti-drug police operations. And kaugnay naman ng ating judiciary, totoo po, nakapagsimula na silang makapaglabas ng mga desisyon sa mangilan-ngilang mga kasong inihain kaugnay ng extrajudicial killing sa war on drugs, particular po yung pagpatay kay Kian de los Santos at yun din po sa dalawa pang bata, sina Carl, sorry Mr. President, nalilimutan ko lang yung apelido nila, at ni Kulot. Opo, pero ito po ay 2 or 3 sa pagkamatay kahit doon sa 6,000 itinala ng PNP na mga deaths na naganap sa anti-drug operations sa war on drugs. At ako po, in closing sa brief manifestation na ito, Mr. President, bilang tugon sa privileged speech ng good gentleman, ay palagay ko kung may 2 or 3 conviction na naibigay na po ng ating judiciary sa mga pamilyang naulila, mga balo, mga ulila, mga ina ng mga batang ito, at kung meron na pong investigasyon na isinasagawa ng ating Internal Affairs Service sa National Police at may naitalala pong figure na 6,000 deaths, ay siguro sa palagay ko rin po ay ang isa namang parallel na international process ay makatutulong, hindi makasasama, makakadagdag sa pagbunyag ng katotohanan at kapag karapat-dapat pagbibigay ng hustisya sa mga naulilang pamilya. So yun lamang po, Mr. President. Salamat po, Mr. President. Salamat, shukran sa good gentleman. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you
President.
to the lady senator from Panay, Senator Ontiveros.
Yes, Mr. President.
Mr. Majority Leader?
President, I move that we recognize also the good gentleman from the Davao region, Mr. President, and the province of Bohol, Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa.
The gentleman from Davao del Sur and Bohol and Mindanao is recognized, Senator Bato de la Rosa, the former chief of the Philippine National Police.
Thank you, Mr. President. Gusto ko lang pong ipaabot ang aking pagkilala sa kagitingan, katapangan at kadakilaan ng ating 2 kasamahan dito sa Senado na si Senator Robin Hood Padilla at Senator Jinggoy Estrada sa kanilang pagpupursigi na maprotektahan ang ating soberenya bilang isang bansa. Ako po ay nagpapasalamat sa kanila, Mr. President, hindi bilang isang principal subject to the investigation that is going to be conducted by the ICC, given the chance by our government, but bilang isang Pilipino na nagmamahal sa ating bansa at bilang isang ordinaryong mamamayan na humahanga sa ganitong klasing mga mambabatas na ayaw isuplong yung ating kasarinlan at ating soberenya sa mga dayuhan, Mr. President. Ako po talaga humahanga sa kanila bilang pagkikilala sa kanilang kabutihan bilang Pilipino. Ako po ay hindi ko may Tagalog, Mr. President, but I run out of words to express how happy I am to have mambabatas like them, Mr. President. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you. We note the manifestation of the gentleman from Davao del Sur, Senator De La Rosa. Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we refer the privileged speech of Senator Robin Hood Padilla and all the manifestations thereon to the Committee on Human Rights, Justice and Human Rights, Mr. President.
Is there an objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, Yes,
Would you like to move for reconsideration of the approval?
Yes, Mr. President, just a short manifestation.
So no more need for a reconsideration?
No reconsideration, Mr. President.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Okay, boss.
I associate myself with the speech given by Senator Robin Hood Padilla. At the same time, Mr. President, I'd like to take this opportunity to report, by way of manifestation, what transpired early this morning, something to do with the dialogue between your Committee on Human Rights with the Subcommittee on Human Rights of the European Union, Mr. President. So most of the items tackled by Senator Padilla were likewise tackled this morning, and I would not prolong this proceedings, Mr. President. I would just like to have my manifestation inserted into the records, Mr. President, to make it official. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none,
join the motion, Mr. President.
the joint motion is approved and the manifestation of the gentleman from Cavite, Senator Tolentino, is inserted into the records.
Yes, Mr. President, at this juncture and with the permission of the body, I move that we proceed with the reference of business. So move, Mr. President.
Secretary?
Bills on first reading, Senate number 1905, restructuring the PNP, amending sections 25, 26, 29, 30, 31, 35, 36, and 67 of RA 6975 as amended, and section 32 of RA 8551, and appropriating funds therefore, Senator De La Rosa.
Referred to the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, Local Government, and Finance.
1906, establishing the National Center for Geriatric Health and Research Institute, defining its powers and functions, creating regional geriatric specialty centers in the Department of Health retained hospitals, appropriating funds therefore, Senator Villar M.
Referred to the Committees on Health and Demography, Ways and Means, and Finance.
1907, establishing migrant Filipino youth desk in all Philippine embassies and for other purposes, Senator Villar M.
Referred to the Committees on Foreign Relations, Youth, and Finance.
1908, institutionalizing the expanded tertiary education equivalency and accreditation program and providing funds therefore, Senator Villar M.
Referred to the Committees on Higher, Technical, and Vocational Education, and Finance.
1909, mandating the inclusion of social awareness and social responsibilities as part of the curriculum in all senior high schools, Senator Villar M.
Referred to the Committee on Basic Education.
1910, providing for the establishment of registries of skilled workers in barangays and for other purposes, Senator Villar M.
Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development, Local Government, and Finance.
1911, providing for the Magna Carta of Barangay Health Workers, Senator Lapid.
Health and Demography, Local Government, Ways and Means, and Finance.
1912, providing for a revised national apprenticeship program, repealing for the purpose chapters 1 and 2 of Title 2, Book 2 of PD 442 as amended, Senator Lapid.
Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
Resolutions, proposed Senate Resolution 493, congratulating and commending the province of Kalinga for bagging the Guinness World Records of the largest gong ensemble and the largest banga dance through the performance of its constituents dubbed as Owongchi Gangsa Agtunchi Banga, or the Call of 1,000 Gongs, Dance of 1,000 Pots, done during the celebration of the 28th founding anniversary of the province of Kalinga on 15 February 2023, Senator Villar C.
Rules.
494, congratulating and commending Yamir Marshall for his fourth straight professional boxing victory after conquering a middleweight match in San Antonio, Texas, USA, Senator Villanueva.
Rules.
495, directing the Senate Committee on Tourism to conduct an inquiry on the reported plans of the Bureau of Corrections to build a new headquarters at the Masungi Geo Reserve, Senator Binay.
Tourism and Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change.
496, directing the proper Senate committees to conduct an inquiry on the implementation of RA 10928 with the end view of adapting the physical specifications of the Philippine passport in line with the 10-year validity and the present needs of overseas Filipino workers, Senator Binay.
Foreign Relations.
497, directing the Senate Committee on Public Accountability Investigations to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into reports of the entries of sugar shipments in Philippine ports ahead of SO number 6 and on possible provisions in SO 6 that may be open to abuse, patronage, and cartelization, Senator Ontiveros.
Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, and Agriculture, Food, and Agrarian Reform.
498, congratulating and commending the Philippine government contingent for their valor and acts of service in the rescue and recovery operations currently being conducted in Turkey following the magnitude 7.8 earthquake that struck their country and Syria, Senator Lapid.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Additional reference of business message from the House. Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 15 February 2023, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 6512, requiring personnel of the Bureau of Fire Protection to be certified medical first responders and emergency medical technicians, amending for the purpose Section 4 of RA 11589.
Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, Health and Demography.
6715, providing for the development of sustainable cities and communities in the country.
Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement, Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation and Futures Thinking, Ways and Means.
6994, mandating the Philippine Merchant Marine Academy to admit at least one cadet from each congressional district every school year to comprise its freshman class.
Higher Technical and Vocational Education.
7012, creating a barangay in the city of Taguig to be known as Barangay North Signal Village.
Local Government and Electoral Reforms and People's Participation.
7013, creating a barangay in the city of Taguig to be known as Barangay South Signal Village.
Local Government and Electoral Reforms and People's Participation.
7005, declaring August 5 of every year a special non-working holiday in Anini, province of Antique, in commemoration of its founding anniversary to be known as the Araw ng Anini.
Local Government.
7014, declaring June 29 of every year special non-working holiday in Coronadal, South Cotabato in celebration of the Tree Growing Festival.
Local Government.
5282, declaring the municipality of San Jose, popularly known as Isla de Carabao, province of Romblon, a tourism destination.
Tourism and Finance.
5515, establishing the Battle of Sibuyan Sea Memorial Shrine in Cayodyongan, province of Romblon, and declaring it a tourism destination.
Tourism and Finance.
6368, declaring the Siki It Elepante Rock Formation in the coast of Barangay Labnig, Corcuera, Romblon, a tourism site.
Tourism and Finance.
6369, declaring the Payayasog Beach located in Mangansag, Corcuera, province of Romblon, a tourism destination.
Tourism and Finance.
6370, declaring the Colong-Colong Beach in Corcuera, Romblon, a tourism destination.
Tourism and Finance.
6371, declaring the Suba Cove located in Barangay San Roque, Mansag, and Mabini, Corcuera, Romblon, an ecotourism zone.
Committees on Tourism, Environment, Natural Resources and Climate Change, and Finance.
6467, declaring the Looc Bay in Looc, Romblon, an ecotourism destination.
Committees on Tourism, Environment, Natural Resources and Climate Change, and Finance.
6927, declaring Barangay Managa in Balutakay, Bansalan, Davao del Sur, a farm tourism destination.
Tourism and Finance.
6928, declaring Lake Apo, located in Ginoyoran, Valencia, Bukidnon, an ecotourism zone.
Tourism, Environment, Natural Resources and Climate Change, and Finance.
6929, declaring the immediate environs of the St. Mary Magdalene Parish Church in the municipality of Kawit, province of Cavite, a tourism destination.
Tourism and Finance.
6930, declaring the immediate environs of Our Lady of the Most Holy Rosary Parish Church located in Rosario, Cavite, a tourism destination.
Tourism and Finance.
6931, declaring the immediate environs of the San Roque Parish Church, also known as the Diocesan Shrine of Nuestra Señora de la Soledad de Portavaga, in the city of Cavite, province of Cavite, a tourism destination.
Tourism and Finance.
606, renaming the Bohol Island Circumferential Road, which commences in Barangay Poblacion, the third towards the north of city of Tagbilaran, and returns to Barangay Poblacion, the third from the eastern side of the city of Tagbilaran in the province of Bohol, as the President Carlos P. Garcia Circumferential Road.
Public Works.
1028, converting the Sawang Macalas Road in the municipality of Romblon, province of Romblon, into a national road and appropriating funds therefore.
Public Works and Finance.
1029, converting the road stretching from Barangay Tugis, municipality of Odiongan, to Barangay Tugdan, municipality of Alcantara, province of Romblon, into a national road appropriating funds therefore.
Public Works and Finance.
1030, converting the road stretching from Boliganay, Barangay Panique, municipality of Odiongan, to Sitio Cabaliwan, Bakawan, municipality of San Agustin, province of Romblon, into a national road appropriating funds therefore.
Public Works and Finance.
1031, converting the Sablayan Ag Panabat Bagakay Road, a section of the Romblon Circumferential Road, into a national road appropriating funds therefore.
Public Works and Finance.
6914, converting the Cebu Technological University into a university system to be known as the Cebu Technological University System, appropriating funds therefore.
Higher Technical and Vocational Education, Ways and Means, and Finance.
7011, providing for the election by district of members of the Sangguniang Panlungsod and members of the Sangguniang Panlalawigan for the city of Imus, amending for the purpose Section 10 of RA 10161, the Charter of the City of Imus.
Local government and electoral reforms and people's participation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, pursuant to the adopted resolution number 42 or the resolution concurring in the ratification of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, I move that we proceed with the designation of members of the Senate Special Oversight Committee on Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. I so move, Mr. President.
The following members are hereby designated as members of the Senate Special Oversight Committee on Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Chairperson, Senator Lauren Legarda, Senate President Pro Tempore. Members, Senator Joel Villanueva, Senate Majority Leader. Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III, Senate Minority Leader. Senator Amy Marcos, Chairperson of the Committee on Foreign Relations. Senator Cynthia Villar, Chairperson of the Committee on Agriculture, Food and Agrarian Reform. Senator Grace Poe, Chairman of Economic Affairs. Senator Mark Villar, Chairperson of the Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship. Senator Sani Angara, Chairman of the Committee on Finance. Senator Win Gatchalian, Chairperson of the Committee on Ways and Means. Senator Jinggoy Erez Estrada, Chairperson of the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development. Senator Alan Peter Compañero Cayetano, Chairperson of the Committee on Science and Technology. So designated.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we proceed to the Senate President's designation of the Senate panel to the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on the Marawi Siege Victims Compensation pursuant to Section 20 of Republic Act number 11696.
The following members are hereby designated as Senate panel to the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on the Marawi Siege Victims Compensation. Number 1, Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa as chairperson. Number 2, Senator Sani Angara. Number 3, Senator Robin Hood Padilla. On the part of the Minority Leader, Senator Coco Pimentel. And 5th, Senator Risa Hontiveros, the Deputy Minority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move to transfer the committee referral of Senate Bill number 1414, the bill pertaining to Barangay Adan, Barangay Bukarot, and Barangay Malasin from the Committee on Rules to the Committees on Local Government and Electoral Reform and People's Participation. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move to transfer the committee referral of the following Senate bills from the Committee on Rules to the Committees on Basic Education and Finance. Senate Bill number 480, this is the bill on Mabka National High School, Sagnay, Camarines Sur, and Senate Bill number 481, bill on Hibauan Integrated School, Mandurriao, Iloilo City. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move to transfer the committee referral of Senate Bill number 121. This is the multi-species marine hatchery in Baybay City, Leyte, from the Committee on Rules to the Committee on Agriculture, Food, and Agrarian Reform and Finance. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the consent of the body and with the permission of Senator Chis Escudero, Senator Estrada would like to insert into the records his co-sponsorship speech on Senate Bill number 1359, under Committee Report number 6, Senate Bill number 1360, under Committee Report number 7, Senate Bill number 1864, under Committee Report number 26. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body and with the permission of the sponsor, Senator Escudero, Senator Cynthia Villar would like to insert into the records her co-sponsorship speech on Senate Bill number 1359 under Committee Report number 6. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move that Senator Go, being made co-author of Senate Bill number 1850 under Committee Report number 24 or the new Agrarian Emancipation Act. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move to transfer the committee referral of the following Senate bills from the Committee on Rules to the Committee on Public Works. Senate Bill number 1151, Eduardo Cojuangco Jr. Avenue. Senate Bill number 1111, Ambassador Eduardo Danding M. Cojuangco Jr. Avenue. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, February 27, 2023. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of February 27, 2023. Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, dear colleague.